American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Damn the Birds and the Bees. When Peter returned to the farm, he saw Azu standing helplessly in front of the unconscious Clark. Peter walked quickly to Clark, picked him up and asked Azu, "What happened, Azu?" I didn't mean to." Azu was obviously frightened and stammered, "I accidentally threw the lawnmower into the sky, and it fell down and hit Clark, Dad. I didn't mean to." He thought Clark was hit by him and might never be able to move again. Peter checked Clark's body and breathed a sigh of relief after confirming that he was fine. "Okay, John, I know you didn't mean to." Peter reached out and stroked his hair, "But we have to take Clark to the hospital." He asked Azu to go to the room to get Clark's clothes, and he went to drive. Although he knew that Clark's steel body could not be sent to new life by a lawnmower, he still went to the hospital for a checkup just in case. At the Smallville Town Central Hospital, the doctor was checking Clark's body, and Jonathan and Martha pushed the door in. Martha saw Clark cooperating with the doctor and came over excitedly to hug him. "Great, Clark, you're fine." The doctor put down the stethoscope and said to Martha, "MRS. Kent, Clark is in good condition now, nothing's wrong, thank you." Martha thanked the doctor repeatedly. Peter next to him pushed Zu, who was bowing his head. Zu walked to Martha with a nervous mood. "I'm sorry, and it's my fault that Clark got hurt." Seeing Zu's self-blame, Martha squatted down and held his hand to comfort him. "It's not your fault, John, I know you didn't mean it." She had seen Zu cutting the human body with a laser when he was a child and knew Zu's superpowers. Comforting Zu, she looked at Clark with a worried look. Clark was fine after being hit by such a heavy lawnmower, which means that he is not an ordinary person like Zu. She originally planned to let Clark go to school recently, but now it seems that she needs to discuss the matter of going to school with Jonathan and Peter. Half an hour later, Zu walked out of the hospital with his father, and he had not yet gotten over the self-blame. Birds chirped and bees hummed on the street. The air was filled with the fragrance of honeysuckle, and his eyes were bright, but Zu felt extremely bad. He hated the sun and the blue sky. Damn the birds and bees, why don't they find a corner to fool around? Zu muttered the last sentence. After hearing it, Peter immediately glared at him. "Did you say bad words just now? This naughty kid can still say bad words now. Is this what he would say at his age?" Zu muttered this sentence and immediately realized that he was in trouble. Seeing Peter's unfriendly look at him, he immediately backed off. "I'm sorry, Dad, He subconsciously protected his butt. Peter did not attack Zu's butt, but squatted down and asked him, "Tell Dad, who did you learn this sentence from?" Seeing Peter's serious expression, Zu became more uneasy. He knew that once his father's face became serious, it meant that he was very angry. "Little Sam Jones," Zu stammered and said the culprit behind the scene. Peter thought about it and realized that this was the black boy who lived near Lana's house. Don't play with this black boy in the future, he didn't like black people. What if this boy passed on the black people's tricks to Zu? Thinking about Zu's future with black slang and flying leaves every day, he suddenly felt that he was not good at all. Okay, Zu nodded. Soon he remembered something. "Dad, is Clark the same as me?" Clark was hit by a lawnmower and was fine after sleeping. He felt that Clark was not a normal person. Peter nodded and said to him, "He is the same as you. You are both gifted people, and you are also brothers." "But," Zu said tangled, "he is not Dad's biological son, I am." Originally, he thought that his advantage was that he inherited his father's talent compared to Clark. Now Clark has also awakened his talent, and he feels that his position may not be guaranteed. Peter looked at the tangled Zu in surprise. This kid cares so much about his own child? What if he knows that he was sent here by a spaceship? Wouldn't his mentality explode? I have to find an opportunity to psychologically counsel this kid's blood relationship concept. "Yes, Zu, you are Dad's son, and you will always be." Peter comforted him a few words and turned the topic to the lawnmower. "Think about it, Zu, if the lawnmower you threw out didn't hit Clark, wouldn't it have killed someone?" Zu nodded dejectedly. Peter continued to guide him. "So you want to go to school. If you lose control in a moment of panic, you may also hurt your classmates. Wouldn't that cause a big disaster?" Zu said thinking that what his father said made sense. "So, our training can't stop?" Peter had trained him and Clark to concentrate before, but the effect was not obvious. It seems that the difficulty must be increased. At night, Patrick's farm. Zoo drank milk while trying to crush the shell of the raw egg in his hand. Peter said that when he was emotional, he couldn't control his strength. So he was asked to try to crush the eggshell without damaging the yolk inside while drinking milk, as it would show a more perverted expression when drinking milk. Although he could do it in normal state, he could not concentrate on the egg in his hand when drinking milk. Crack, looking at the crushed egg in his hand, Azu looked depressed and picked up another egg. At the same time, Officer Ryan received a call from the police late at night. Another jewelry store in the town was robbed. When he drove to the jewelry store, the police were already conducting a scene inspection. Is it that guy who did it again? Looking at the messy scene, Officer Ryan asked the police in charge of the scene. Similar cases, including the robbery of the Luther family bank, have occurred 3 times today. It is very likely that no one can have such a strong force to tear open the iron door. The police in charge of the scene pointed to the store door that was torn open as if by claws. What is this? A werewolf? Officer Ryan sneered and shook his head. We don't have the legend of werewolves here. Is there a surveillance camera at the scene? He continued to ask. No, the surveillance was destroyed in advance, so there are no video clues left. This is really bad. As Officer Ryan said this, he walked to the broken glass and picked up a green crystal-sized stone from the ground. What is this? Chapter 27, Azu's Enrollment. A week later, Zu proudly showed off his birthday present to Clark. Clark was discharged from the hospital that day, and he generously forgave Zu for accidentally dropping a lawnmower on his head. Wearing the same children's version of the Homelander uniform as in his previous life, Zu crossed his arms. How is it? Very handsome, right? Clark looked at Zu's showy uniform and asked, do you really like this outfit? Of course, my dad gave it to me. Zu said that he thought this uniform was cool. This is a Homelander exclusive suit, my dad said. Clark was not very interested in the exclusive suit, but what made him envious was that the Godfather took Zu to the amusement park and museum on Zu's birthday. The amusement park had a performance by the Smallville High School band at 6 p.m., and a band called Happy Man Barbershop. At 10 p.m., the amusement park also held a large fireworks display. As for the museum, it was filled with a collection of old Mike, a local librarian and amateur historian. Recently, the oldest family in town has lent out priceless heirlooms for free. These include restaurant menus from the 1890s, lumberjacks bollards, axes and hooks from the 1980s, and toys from the 1920s. But I heard that the Women's Association rejected some of old Mike's collections. For example, the famous chair-shaped cage from the 1930s, and some photos of gangster gunfights, all of which were denied by the Women's Association. I wonder what birthday present my godfather will give me when my birthday comes. Clark has already started to imagine his birthday. Although it is still 8 months away from his birthday. Azu didn't notice Clark's imagination. After having the best birthday, he fell into a sad state again. Dad asked me to control my power and said that the new school season is about to start. I must learn to control it before sending you and me to school. Although Azu was very eager for the school life he had never experienced, his eyebrows immediately frowned when he thought of his father's special training for him. Hearing Azu mention the special training, Clark also felt sympathetic. Peter not only trained Azu, but also trained him. However, Clark's ability now is just stronger, plus a thick skin and thick flesh skill, so his training difficulty is more than 1 order of magnitude lower than Azu. Are you looking forward to school life, Azu? Clark asked Azu. A little, but I prefer to stay on the farm and be a cowboy. Azu said that his current dream is to inherit his father's farm. He glanced at Clark, always feeling that the other party would threaten his inheritance order. Although it may not be a threat now, what about the future? Whenever something develops normally, there will always be a third party at a critical moment. This is Azu's new conclusion. The inspiration comes from the TV series The Fugitive he watched recently. Every time the protagonists in the show are close to success, a third party will jump out and mess everything up. Azu did not reveal his thoughts. He touched his itchy nose and asked Clark, "What about you? Clark, do you like school?" "Yes, I'm looking forward to it." Clark thought of Lana. Lana should be in the 2nd grade soon. I can see her when I go to school. Squeak. Peter parked the car outside the school and said to Zu and Clark, who were sitting in the back seat, "Okay, soldiers, we are going to the battlefield. Be alert and don't lose face." At the beginning of the new school season, Zoo has basically been able to control the power of his emotions, and Jonathan and his wife have agreed to Clark's enrollment. So the two can enroll on the last day of the enrollment period. Clark swallowed and got out of the car with his school bag on his back. The top of the iron gate of the school, each spike is decorated with irises. To Clark, it looks like teeth. A hungry black dog opened its mouth to reveal its metal canines. This made his already nervous mood even more nervous. There was a guard standing at the door, an old black man, his eyes tightly contracted behind the skin that looked like a crawling slug, and pale, wire-brush-like beard on his cheeks. To Clark, the other party looked like a devil guarding the gate of an evil castle. Peter didn't know that Clark had imagined the school into an evil castle. After Jonathan drove them to the door, he went back to the farm for Peter to handle the relevant formalities. Peter walked forward with the two boys along the winding road. A woman happened to come towards them. The curvy and hot beauty walked past Peter with a few books. After passing by, the beauty suddenly froze. After a while, she turned around and stared at Peter's back. Martha MacDonald was in a state of shock. The beauty, who was in the Frank gang at the time and witnessed Peter killing a group of gangsters, stood there in a daze. Because of the kidnapping incident she had encountered before, she was depressed, so she tried to change her environment. After resigning from her original school, she transferred to Smallville as an elementary school teacher. Unexpectedly, she met the guy who saved her before. Did she recognize the wrong person? No, it was definitely not wrong. Although the other party was not wearing glasses now, the temperament exuded by her body was completely different from that time. But she was particularly sensitive to the smell of human bodies since she was a child. No matter who it was, as long as she remembered the smell characteristics of the other person, she could always recognize them. Should she follow him, or just walk away as if nothing had happened? After hesitating for a while, she finally followed him. In the principal's office, Peter was discussing with the principal about the admission of two young boys. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked towards the door. Any questions? The white principal, who looked exquisite and elegant in a leather jacket, asked Peter. Mr. Padrick, no, sorry, Mr. Principal, let's continue. After coming out of the principal's office, Peter looked at the other end of the corridor. Someone was standing outside eavesdropping just now. He was keenly aware of the other person's appearance the moment he appeared. Is it that woman? When he passed by Martha MacDonald just now, he also recognized that she was the woman who was almost ravaged by Frank's gang that night. The other person had been secretly following him until he followed him to the principal's office. Did she recognize him? He frowned slightly, and a trace of doubt rose in his heart. It was dark at night, and he had deliberately changed his body shape and appearance. How could the other party recognize him? He looked down at Clark, who was wearing the black-framed glasses he gave him, and pinched his face. Or was this kid good at disguise? A pair of glasses did it. Godfather, Clark didn't know why Peter pinched his face, showing a troubled expression. Thank you all for your recommendation votes and monthly tickets. The newbie is favored monthly. Thank you little newbie for the reward. Bow. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28, Shadow of the Slide. At noon, in the Smallville Salon restaurant. The sounds related to eating were endless. Spoons were stirring in cups, hot oil in pans was sizzling and smoking, and forks were scraping plates and dishes. Peter flipped the soft eggs in front of him and looked up at the school not far away. It has been 3 days since Clark and Azu entered the school on their first day. The two naughty kids have not yet recovered from the excitement of entering the school. Bang! 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 The sound of footsteps hitting the floor sounded, and a middle-aged man wearing a North Carolina hat walked to sit across from Peter's table. Good afternoon, Chandler, Peter greeted the middle-aged man who had made an appointment in advance. Chandler did not take off his hat, but looked around nervously. I told you not to say my name loudly. Peter looked at the nervous policeman and was a little speechless. We are not doing any illegal transactions. Why are you so nervous? Chandler is a policeman in Smallville Town, and he is a colleague of Officer Ryan. Peter had reached some secret deal with him before. He paid Chandler some dollars, and Chandler provided him with some inside information of the police station. Peter picked up a cinnamon toast. Just think of me as a reporter, And it's not illegal for the police to reveal some inside information to reporters, right? Chandler exhaled and adjusted his sitting position to make his fat body more comfortable in the chair. You always have a point, Peter. Peter crumpled a large piece of toast into a ball, poked an egg yolk, and let the overflowing yellow liquid merge with the maple syrup surrounding them. He asked Chandler, any clues about the robbery of the Luther family bank? Regarding the robbers who robbed banks and jewelry stores in the town, Peter felt that this guy challenged his bottom line. The Luther family bank and the jewelry store were his own private land. This bastard robbed his things without permission, and he would be angry if he didn't get rid of him. So he contacted Chandler and asked him to reveal some inside information of the police station to him. Chandler looked around and confirmed that no one was paying attention to this side. He took out a stack of photos and put them on the table. After robbing several banks and jewelry stores in succession, the suspect has disappeared recently. It seems that he has temporarily hidden. Peter frowned and picked up the photos on the table. The photos were all on-site photos of the robbed jewelry store. The glass cabinets were smashed and the metal safes were deformed by the impact. Peter put down the photos and asked Chandler, you should have sent people to keep an eye on the bank and jewelry store, right? Why haven't you caught him yet? Chandler said helplessly, he is not an ordinary person. We can't send 1 or 2 policemen to keep an eye on him, but we don't have enough police force. You know, after the terrorist attack in the auditorium, we have to send policemen to patrol the streets all the time. Peter nodded. Do you have any guesses about the identity of the suspect? It should be a young man, young and strong, agile and powerful. Young man. Peter frowned slightly. The scope of young people is large. Do I have to go out in person, patrol the town at night as Batman, and catch this guy who may have committed a crime? Zizzy. Zizzy. As Peter was lost in thought, Chandler's intercom rang. Yes, I'm having dinner outside. Is it near Canal Street? I'll be there right away. He turned off the intercom, stood up and said to Peter, sorry, there's a murder nearby. I have to rush over right away. Murder? What murder? Chandler put on his hat. An old man was strangled to death by piano wire at home, but it's hard to say. Maybe he used the piano wire to hang himself. He turned around and prepared to leave. Wait, Peter stopped him and pointed to an envelope on the table. You forgot to take something. Oh, sorry, my memory has been a little bad lately. Chandler understood, picked up the envelope on the table, felt the thickness, and roughly guessed how much money Peter put in it. See you next time, Mr. Patrick. Chandler said goodbye to Peter happily. But his good mood was soon ruined by the smell of the murder scene. The strong smell of blood pierced his nose like copper rust, making him want to vomit. Looking at the horrible scene, with the head of the body almost strangled by the piano wire, he frowned and looked at Officer Ryan next to him. Ryan checked the scene and said to him, I hope the smell here won't make you vomit your lunch. Chandler walked to Officer Ryan's side. I'm not a rookie. I've been working in the police department for 15 years. This situation won't make me lose my composure. How about it? Do you have any clues? Officer Ryan closed his notebook. There is a camera at the intersection outside this house. What did you find? We found a guy in it. Who? Ryan was silent for a second and said, it's the guy who robbed the Luther family bank. School. Clark walked out of the corridor with his school bag on his back. At the end of school, the liberated first-year students cheered and fled the classroom. Bang! A tall and strong boy with freckles on his face deliberately bumped into Clark's shoulder. Clark, who didn't notice, staggered. Farm boy, don't block me next time you walk, the tall and strong freckled boy threatened Clark as he walked forward. Clark didn't say anything, but just quietly put away the bag that fell on the ground. Are you okay, Clark? Martha McConnell saw Clark's books scattered all over the ground and came to help him pick up the books. Yes, I'm fine. Clark hurriedly put the books in his bag and was about to leave. He felt embarrassed to be seen in this situation. Even if the other person was not Lana. On the other side, Azu, who was on the other side of the corridor, saw Clark push down, and his little face suddenly tense up. He looked at the freckled boy who left, and followed him with a tense face. The freckled boy did not go home immediately, but went to the facilities behind the school playground. There were various small exercise equipment in the sports facilities, and the only large one was the slide placed in the center. He liked to play with a group of little followers after school. But because he stayed in school for a few more minutes today, all the followers had left school, so he had to come by himself. He was in a good mood and walked to the slide, ready to slide down. But for some reason, He always felt like something was following him, and the feeling of uneasiness kept lingering in his heart. Standing on the 2-meter-high slide, he looked back anxiously. Behind him was a peaceful forest. He thought he was overthinking, so he took a deep breath. When he bent down to get into the slide, he didn't notice that there was suddenly a figure behind him. Chapter 29. Am I not here to question you? The freckled boy seemed to sense something and turned his head suddenly. However, before he could see the shadow behind him, he was pushed forward heavily. He lost his balance and fell down in fear. Bang! The falling body hit the ground heavily with a dull sound. The arm that hit the ground first felt as if it was broken. He tried to stand up, but the slightest movement caused him to feel piercing pain. Tears and snot gushed out instantly. Through his tearful eyes, he looked up and saw a figure standing on the slide. Azu looked down at the freckled fat boy crying on the ground, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Night. Padwick Farm. I can't believe he did such a thing. The mother of the freckled little fat boy, her face flushed, pointed at Azu who was standing next to her. He pushed Dale directly down the slide. This is murder, Ms. York. John couldn't do such a thing, Peter said calmly. He is not that kind of person. Maybe Dale fell down by himself. Before dinner, the mother of the freckled little fat boy who was pushed down the slide, led her son with his arm bandaged, and came to ask for the crime aggressively. Peter naturally knew that it must have been Azu who did it. He knew it, but he would definitely not admit it. After all, this kid did a pretty good job. He avenged Clark and punished the bully. Thinking of this, he looked at the woman. He thought to himself that you should be thankful that you didn't meet Azu in your previous life. This kid cut all the guys who bullied him into pieces in his previous life. Ms. York didn't notice Peter's complicated expression. When she heard Peter say that Dale fell down by himself, she immediately stopped. She roared at Peter, "So you're saying I lied?" Gulp. Clark, who was standing next to him and welcoming the woman spitting, swallowed nervously. He secretly glanced at Zu, who was lowering his head, and found that the other party had no expression. I didn't say that, Ms. York. I just want to tell you that no one saw John push Dale down the slide, but Dale pushed Clark down in the school corridor, and many people saw it. Peter's tone became serious. Let's put aside the things without evidence first. Why don't we discuss the things with solid evidence first? Ms. York was a little flustered when she heard Peter's words, and she glanced at the fat boy. Dal, did you really do that? Dale was about to deny it, but when he looked up and saw Peter's terrifying look at him, he immediately swallowed what he wanted to say. He lowered his head and stammered, I was careless. No, it wasn't careless. If it was, you should have apologized after knocking someone down, but not only did you not apologize, you also said something excessive, right? Peter stood up and shot a threatening look at the little fat boy. Dale, lying is not a good character. Dale didn't know why, but he felt scared when he saw Peter's eyes. So under Peter's coercion, he had to admit that he bullied Clark. I didn't mean it. I accept your apology. Clark, what about you? Peter looked at Clark with satisfaction. Clark looked at the scene in front of him with a dull look, until Peter turned the topic to him. He woke up from his dream and said yes, I also accept Dale's apology. Dale looked at Clark with a seemingly honest expression and scratched his head. Why did he apologize without knowing why? Ms. York, I think Dale should know that he is wrong. Peter said in a sincere tone, we should give children a chance to correct their mistakes. I hope you will not punish him for his bullying behavior, Ms. York. It was not until she walked out of the farm that Ms. York suddenly reacted. Isn't it wrong? Wasn't she going to ask for punishment? Why was she being lectured? She thought about it angrily and concluded that it was all the fault of this stupid teammate. Looking at her son who looked fine, she reached out and twisted his ear. Why are you so stupid and say everything? Ms. York, who felt that she was cheated by her mother, grabbed her son's ear and twisted it. In the dark night, Dale screamed. Clark on the farm seemed to hear the shrill scream. He shuddered and walked quickly towards Peter. Godfather, thank you, and Azu. Clark thanked the two. He felt that the Godfather was really amazing, and he made Dale apologize to him in an instant. At first he thought he would get Zu scolded, but he didn't expect it to end like this. Zu's mood didn't seem to be affected. His mouth was full of cinnamon buns. I'm not avenging you, Clark. He didn't admit that he was avenging Clark. I just wanted to beat him up. So you admit that you pushed Darl down the slide? Peter looked at Zu who was eating like a lumberjack, and asked in a bad tone. Feeling Peter's gaze, Zu stopped eating immediately. Dad, I know I was wrong, Once Dad turns on the terrifying aura, he directly admits his mistakes. This is Zoo's life creed. Good, then what was your mistake? Wrong. Zoo was a little speechless, and glanced at Clark standing at the table. You shouldn't have pushed him down. Yes, you shouldn't have pushed him down. Peter nodded. You should show your fist and punch his little face. Of course, you can't break his face, just make him feel pain. Zoo and Clark nodded when they heard Peter say you shouldn't have pushed him down. When they heard punch him in the face, the two were stunned. For this kind of bully, swallowing your anger will only encourage their arrogance. Clark, Peter reached out and touched Zoo's hair, so the best way is to make them realize their wrong behavior. Zoo, you are doing normal things, so there is no need to be sneaky. But Godfather, Clark asked doubtfully, didn't you say that we are not allowed to fight? Fighting is a bad thing, but sometimes fighting is the only way to solve problems, of course, unless you have a better way to deal with it. Clark and Zoo nodded, not quite understanding. Godfather, why does Doll bully people? Doesn't he know that the bullied people will be sad? Clark asked his question again. Peter thought about it and said to him, because humans can never empathize. Empathize? Well, Clark, you can never really understand a person unless you walk around in his shoes and consider things from his perspective. But when you really walk through his path, you will feel sad even when you pass by. Chapter 30 Immortality is a curse. You don't know what others have experienced, and you can never empathize with them. How others change from white to gray, and then to black, and wither in countless ways, but we can only see the final withering. Peter patted Clark on the shoulder. So, we can never empathize with others, nor can we make others empathize with us. Clark and Zoo both listened carefully. After thinking for a while, Clark continued to ask, 100,000 whys, then what should we do? He was a little confused now. So some of the pain has to be licked by us ourselves. In addition, although we can't empathize, accompanying is also a way. He felt that he had to convey some positive things to the two of them. Otherwise, what if these two kids would kill and burn recklessly in the future? This is the American comic world. Although these two bear children are at the top of the food chain, there is no guarantee that an alien creature will pop out one day and beat them up. Even among the positive energy instilled, most of them he himself did not believe. I will always be with you, Dad. Clark thought for a long time and said this sentence from his mouth. Seeing such a good opportunity to show loyalty, Azu next to him immediately said, me too, Dad, I will always be with you. I will be with you too. Peter patted their hair. Okay, it's getting late. It's time to go to bed. Azu didn't leave immediately. He waited until Clark went upstairs. Then he said a little embarrassedly, Dad, you haven't told me the bedtime story you promised to tell me last time. He was still thinking about the bedtime story last time. Which one do you want to hear? In Azu's bedroom, Peter picked up a fairy tale book and said to him, let me tell you in advance, no zombies or horror stories. Hearing that he couldn't listen to zombies and horror stories, Azu was a little dejected. Okay, Dad. In fact, he was not very interested in stories. He just wanted Peter to accompany him. He thought Peter would scold him for pushing Fatty Doll down the slide. When the other party's mother came to question him, he thought he would definitely get a spanking. But in the end, not only did his father not scold him, but he made Mrs. York speechless and praised his actions. This made Azu feel affirmed and valued. Since Dad said that the best way to understand others is to accompany them, then he will accompany Dad. Azu thought of the above, holding the milk bottle in his hand, looking at Peter, wanting to know what story his father would tell him. Peter flipped through the book. Okay, this is it, The Mermaid Legend. Legend has it that there is a kind of fish meat in the world. As long as you eat it, you can gain the ability to live forever. Peter slowly read the story in the book. There is such a village. The old people in the village are all immortal, and the old people serve a 15-year-old girl. One day, a young man passed by here. The old people thought that the young man was exploring the secret of their immortality and killed him. Peter told Azu the story of the mermaid legend. The mermaid legend, adapted by cartoonist Rumiko Takahashi, tells the story of the protagonist coming to an unknown village where only women live, and by chance, he encounters the girl Mane with shackles on her feet. After listening to him, Zu asked curiously, Dad, will immortality really make people so crazy? Yes, we will all grow old, get sick and die, so some people want to stay young forever. Peter touched his face when he said this. Because of the watch, he now maintains an almost unchanged appearance. It seems that he will have to cover up his appearance in the future, such as growing a beard or dyeing his hair white. Otherwise, the secret of his youth will definitely be discovered. At that time, someone might attack him for the secret of immortality like the old man in the mermaid story. Although his current physical fitness has surpassed that of ordinary people, and with Clark and Zoo as his two thugs, any scoundrel is no problem. But if he is discovered, it will always be a trouble. For example, recently, Martha has been asking him about the secret of skincare. He closed the book and looked out the window. In the dark night, the moonlight shining on the crops was like a silver glow, and the whole farm was filled with a quiet atmosphere. Splash! It seemed that something heavy fell into the Smallwool River. Then came the speeding police cars. Several police cars flashed red lights and rushed here at the fastest speed. Officer Ryan jumped out of the car with a gun in his hand before the car stopped. He chased to the river with a pistol. The remaining police officers also rushed to the river with weapons. Damn it! Seeing the calm river surface, Ryan gritted his teeth and cursed. He and his men finally squatted near the jewelry store. Unexpectedly, this guy's ability was really abnormal. Not only could he resist the impact of bullets, but he could even lift a motorcycle on the roadside at will. Several policemen who couldn't dodge in time were directly injured. Fortunately, he brought heavy firepower weapons and served this guy with a bullet storm. The robber who couldn't withstand the heavy firepower didn't bother at the scene. He threw several motorcycles at the police car, smashed the police car and set it on fire, and then fled the scene directly. Ryan led the police to chase to the scene and watched the other party jump into the river and disappear. Damn it! Who of you can swim? Ryan asked the police around him. He was very unwilling to see the wanted criminal escape in front of him. After several policemen looked at each other, they all shook their heads. Being a policeman is just a job, and they won't fight so hard. Not only is the river turbulent, but the robbers may also be lying in ambush in the water. If they go down, they may accidentally die in the line of duty. Whereas the downstream of the river, seeing that his men were silent, he frowned and asked. His men replied to him, "It's Smallwool Elementary School." At this time, the river surfaced near Smallwool Elementary School. The calm water with a faint green glow suddenly rippled, and then a figure emerged from the water. The sturdy and muscular young man took off the mask on his face. Splash! Splash! He waved his arms and quickly swam to the shore. Wiping the water off his face, he took off his shirt. As he walked towards the shore step by step, his body also changed dramatically. The originally tense muscles became loose, and the young face quickly aged. Soon he changed from a young man with strong muscles to an old man in his 50s or 60s. Thanks to the readers and 27,715 for their rewards. Thank you all for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Bow. Chapter 31. Your hard days are still ahead. The next day, early in the morning. The school morning was quiet and peaceful. Zoo and Clark passed by a kiosk selling agricultural and sideline products in front of the school, Honey Hole. The brick red kiosk looked very old. The paint was peeling and most of the colors were faded. The letters on the sign had also faded and disappeared, leaving only the word. Zoo threw $1 into the box of Honey Hole and took some honey sticks. Since Peter bought him one last time, he liked the taste of honey sticks. Clark looked at the honey sticks Zoo handed over and asked in surprise, "Where did you get the money from?" "I help my dad weed, and my dad pays me $1 each time." Zoo said that his money was entirely earned through labor. "But my dad recently said that he would launch a wage and labor incentive plan, and the weeding task at home would be left to me, $7 a week." Zoo didn't know that he was being ripped off by his capitalist father, and he was still complacent about it. Clark was a little envious, and he also wanted to make money like Zoo. "Maybe I can help Godfather clean the barn, so I can earn some pocket money." Clark also decided to join Godfather's wage and labor incentive plan. "We can make money together, Clark." But, as Zoo quickly became frustrated, "I should have $10, but Dad said I can't take that much money, so he put it in the bank for me and said he would save it for me first." Clark thought about it and said, "I think this is good. Can't the bank make more money deposited?" At this time, Clark didn't know that one of the deepest routines in the world is that children will be taken away from their pocket money with the excuse of mom and dad will save the money for you and give it to you when you grow up. As a result, without exception, when you grow up, you will find that all the money your parents helped save has disappeared. Clark and Azu, who didn't know they were being tricked, walked towards the school while holding the honey stick in their mouths. Just as they walked to the school gate, they saw Lana, who was parting with her aunt. "Goodbye, Aunt." After saying goodbye to her aunt, Lana walked towards the school with her school bag on her back. As a result, she accidentally tripped over a stone and fell to the ground with a bang. The school bag she was carrying was also thrown out, and all the books inside scattered out. Seeing Lana fall, Clark immediately rushed up at a speed that Azu had never seen before. "Lana, are you okay?" He helped Lana, who was frowning, up. "I'm fine, I just accidentally fell." "Thank you, Clark." Although Lana's knee was hurt and hurt, she still pursed her lips and endured the pain to thank Clark. Seeing that Lana was fine, Clark quickly helped her put away the books scattered on the ground. When he bent down to pick up the book, he suddenly found a green necklace on the ground. The stone emitting a faint green light was very similar to the stone that the Godfather had shown him before. Out of curiosity, he picked up the necklace. As a result, he felt a sense of weakness in an instant, as if all the strength in his body was drained in an instant. Then his body fell backwards uncontrollably, and the green necklace in his hand fell to the ground with a snap. Bang! When he was about to fall, his back was supported by a broad and strong hand. "Kid, are you okay?" A deep voice came. Clark looked back after maintaining his balance. The school guard, an old black man with a pale, wire-brush-like beard, was looking at him with concern. Clark recognized that he was the black guard he saw when he first came to school. He remembered that everyone called this security guard Old Hori. At that time, he imagined him as the devil guard of the evil castle. "I just felt dizzy, Mr. Hori. I'm fine now." Clark rubbed his forehead and thanked Old Hori. Lana bent down to pick up the necklace on the ground and walked to Clark with a worried look on her face. The necklace was a relic left to him by her mother, so she always wore it with her. Seeing Clark holding the necklace and almost falling, she thought he was scratched by the necklace. Old Holly put away the writing board in his hand and narrowed his eyes. "You don't look well, kid. You need to go to the infirmary for a checkup." As the school security guard, he was responsible for the safety of the students and had to send Clark to the infirmary for a checkup. Although Clark was very reluctant, he was still forced to do it. Old Holly, who left the school gate, took Clark to the infirmary and glanced at the necklace in Lana's hand. His expression became a little complicated. Padwick Farm. Peter received a call from Chandler at the police station. Chandler told him about Officer Ryan's pursuit of a serial robber last night. Smallwool River. After hanging up the phone, Peter fell into deep thought. Could this guy be the mermaid in the story he told Azu last night? Shaking his head, he threw the absurd idea of a mermaid out of his mind. But it can be concluded that this guy is a good swimmer. And he is very familiar with the terrain near the Smallwool River. When he was thinking about the composition of the robber, the phone on the farm rang. Peter picked up the phone and put on his coat and rushed to school after hearing that Clark was in trouble. Driving towards the school, Peter heard the sound of gurgling water as he approached the school. 2 minutes later, the towering trees disappeared, replaced by a rugged riverbank covered with green grass. The water of the Smallwool River gurgled and rushed forward. The driveway turned again and Peter soon arrived at the school. Infirmary. Peter knocked on the door of the infirmary and entered. Martha McConaughey, Clark and Azu's assistant teacher, who I met last time, was waiting in the infirmary. She breathed a sigh of relief when she saw Peter coming. Peter pretended to meet each other for the first time, greeted the beautiful teacher with a strange expression, and looked at Clark and Azu. "Are you feeling unwell, Clark?" he asked Clark after touching his hair. "I'm fine, Godfather." Clark lay on the bed and whispered to Peter, "Godfather, it's that kind of stone." "What stone?" "It's Lana's necklace. I picked it up and was about to give it back to her, and I felt dizzy." "The stone you showed me last time, Godfather, I think it's the same as Lana's necklace, home kryptonite?" Hearing Clark's words, he immediately realized that Lana's necklace was kryptonite. Since the other party treated kryptonite as a necklace, it meant that she would carry it with her in the future. Thinking of Clark's coveting for Lana, now he really wanted to say to his cheap son, "Cherish the present, your hard days are still ahead." Chapter 32 Revenge and Rebirth. Late at night. Smallwool Elementary School. Under the moonlight, the river was shrouded in mist. Old Hori, who had taken Clark to the infirmary during the day, slowly walked to the river. Deep in the river, a faint green light was emanating. Old Hori looked around, confirmed that there was no one, took a deep breath, and jumped into the river with a plop. As he slowly dived into the water, the surface of the water gradually became calm. Splash! A few minutes later, Old Hori emerged from the water. After being soaked in the river water, his originally old and wrinkled face turned into a young face. His thin and shriveled figure was also replaced by a figure full of strong muscles. After paddling ashore, old Hori found the backpack placed in a hidden place in advance, took out the prepared clothes from it, and changed into them. After changing into clothes, old Hori transformed into a trendy and young black youth. Feeling this young body, he closed his eyes and clenched his fists, feeling the surging power in his body. His body was trembling slightly. He was addicted to this feeling and couldn't help wanting to release this power immediately. He opened his eyes and shook off the water droplets on his hair. He raised his head and cast his gaze towards the dark night in the distance. He said a name, Andy Hawkins. Bang! Andy Hawkins at the car repair shop closed the car door and clapped his hands. He gently hit his waist and shook his head helplessly. As he got older, his physical strength became worse. When he was young, he would not feel tired even if he lay on the ground to repair the car for 3 hours. Now, after only repairing it for an hour, his waist was so tired that he couldn't stand up. He closed the garage door and was about to leave when he suddenly saw a figure standing in front of him. He was startled and stepped back suddenly. With the thin moonlight, Andy Hawkins saw a black youth wearing a baseball cap standing in front of him. "Oh my God. Kid, you scared me," Andy Hawkins exhaled, thinking that the other party came to him to repair his car. "I have a Dodge Crown 500, Mr. Andy, can you help me fix it?" Hori walked up to him and asked him in a deep voice. "Dodge Crown 500, this is an antique from the last century. Is it your grandfather's car?" Andy Hawkins looked at him in surprise. "Young people nowadays don't like this car. I like old things." Hori shrugged his shoulders and walked towards him. "Do you know how the car broke down?" Without waiting for Andy Hawkins to answer, he continued, 40 years ago, 4 high school students drove this car to a bar. Maybe they drank a little too much, they did something stupid and wanted to rob a jewelry store." Andy Hawkins was originally listening to this story with a smile, but the more he listened, the more something was wrong. As a result, this group of unlucky guys happened to meet a patrol policeman, and they were arrested without any surprise. In order to get away with it, 3 of them pushed the crime onto another black man. When Andy Hawkins heard this, cold sweat instantly covered his forehead. That black high school student was originally a promising baseball player on the school baseball team. He could even participate in the major league training directly after graduation, but this crime completely ruined his life. After hearing this, Andy Hawkins looked at him with a face full of doubt. "Who are you?" Among the 3 people who escaped the crime, there is a guy named Andy Hawkins, and the person they framed is called Hori Mays. Hori said this and took off his baseball cap, revealing a face that Andy Hawkins couldn't believe. "You Hori, it's you." No. This is impossible." He recognized the other person as the young Hori. But how could the other person return to youth? "Long time no see, Andy. I'm Hori Mays." Hori enjoyed the other person's horrified expression when he saw him. A sense of pleasure rose in his heart. "Want to know why I am here? It's not complicated. My life was ruined by you. After I was released from prison, I left Smallville and only came back here recently. I thought I would never have the chance to take revenge, but I didn't expect." He walked slowly to a car and leaned his back against it. "One day, I was walking by the river and accidentally fell into the river. Have you heard of the legend of mermaids?" Hori clasped his hands in front of his chest. "Legend has it that there is a kind of mermaid in the world. As long as you eat its meat, you can restore your youth. Maybe. I accidentally bit off a piece of mermaid meat in the river, so I restored my youth, and my strength is far beyond that of ordinary people. It's incredible. If it hadn't happened to me, I would even think it was a fairy tale." Andy Hawkins quickly apologized to the other party. "Sorry, Hori, I didn't want to do that. They said they wanted to put all the blame on you, and I tried to stop them." Hori made a gesture to silence. "I know you are a good person, Andy, but," he soon changed the subject, "you are also a weak person." The next second, he instantly moved to Andy Hawkins' side. Hori stretched out his hand like a knife and slashed the opponent's neck. Andy Hawkins' face flushed red, and his 2 eyeballs seemed to be sucked into his brain. Losing his balance, he covered his throat and fell back heavily. Then, he felt that his feet seemed to be lifted up, but it was not his will, but Hori was dragging them. His consciousness gradually became unclear, and waves of piercing pain came from his waist. He wanted to shout for help, but no sound came out of his throat, and finally his consciousness gradually blurred during the dragging process. Bang! Padrick Farm. Zoo took the baseball thrown to him by Peter. The 2 were playing a baseball throwing game after dinner. Zoo caught the baseball and asked Peter in confusion, "Dad, what happened to Clark during the day? He is allergic to that green stone, so don't let him touch that kind of thing in the future." "John," Peter found an excuse for Clark. "Greenstone." Zoo controlled the strength and threw the baseball gently to Peter. "I will protect Clark and not let him touch that kind of stone." Zoo raised his chest and said, "By the way, Dad," he suddenly remembered something important and stopped throwing. "Ms. McConaughey said that the school will go to the museum next week." He looked at Peter eagerly. "Dad, can you ask for leave for me? I've been there once on my birthday. Don't you want to participate in the event?" "Yes, I can weed at home." "Dad, didn't you say that the faster I complete the weeding task, the higher my salary?" Zoo has been completely addicted to the great cause of earning pocket money. Thank you all for voting. Recommend a high-quality American comic novel by a friend. American Comics, Enlightenment in Arkham, Ascension to the Homeland. Interested readers can click on the link below. Chapter 33 School Bus Horror. "Okay, everyone hurry up and get on the bus. Clark, speed up." At Smallwood Elementary School, Martha McDonald clapped her hands and directed the messy students to get on the school bus. Clark looked back at the depressed Zoo and slowed down to wait for him to get on. "John, you look unhappy." "Yes, because I have visited old Mike's collection once, on my last birthday," Zoo said dejectedly. "I wanted my father to help me ask for leave to clean up the weeds on the farm, but my father refused." "What did the Godfather say?" Clark asked curiously. "Dad said that you are not allowed to work part-time during school hours." Zoo sat down on the back seat of the school bus, leaning his arm on the front seat to support his chin. He sighed like Peter and said in a mature manner, "Alice, it's another boring day. Students, we are visiting the museum today. I hope everyone can have a good day, but before enjoying the good time, we must abide by the order." Teacher Martha waited until all the students got on the bus and began to explain the visiting process and precautions to the students. Old Holly sat at the front of the school bus, acting as the security guard for this event. His cloudy eyes flashed a gleam from time to time, inspecting the students on the school bus. The school bus started quickly and rushed along the road to the museum. "I hate buses." Zoo looked at the scenery passing by quickly outside the window and said to Clark sitting next to him, "The feeling of a school bus is the same as a bus. Have you ever taken a bus?" "John?" Clark asked in surprise. Since Peter and Jonathan's families both have cars, Clark basically travels by car. He has not experienced the bus yet. "Of course, one time my dad forgot to drive and took me on the bus." Zoo had a bad experience at that time. There was a guy sitting in front of us at the time. He smelled like a mixture of urine and Doritos. He was wearing hobo-style clothes. Dad said that his clothes were at the forefront of fashion trends, so I don't know if he was really homeless or just a guy who chased fashion without restraint. Clark felt that the Godfather's words were both a joke and the truth. After frowning and thinking for a long time, Clark finally concluded that this might be a cold joke from the Godfather. The Godfather always suddenly said something he didn't understand. Whenever he asked, the Godfather would tell him that it was a cold joke. For example, once the Godfather asked him seriously, if he flew up and caught a woman falling at high speed with his arms, how could the woman's body not be broken into 3 pieces? Zoo didn't notice Clark's tangled expression. He supported his chin with one hand and looked at the scenery outside the window boredly. The school bus continued to move forward, passing the honey cave selling agricultural and sideline products, and drove to a bridge. A pickup truck loaded with paint drove from the opposite lane. Seeing the appearance of the pickup truck, the school bus driver prepared to slow down. But just as the two vehicles were about to meet, the pickup truck loaded with paint suddenly crossed the center line and hit the school bus. "Fuck!" Seeing the out-of-control pickup truck hitting him, the driver burst into a swear word, immediately gripped the steering wheel tightly, his 10 knuckles swollen wide, and at the same time, he stepped on the brakes hard. The tires screamed harshly like lambs to be slaughtered. The rear of the car suddenly swung to one side. The students in the school bus were excitedly discussing activities, but they suddenly felt their bodies lose weight. Bang! The students who stood up were thrown heavily onto their seats, making a dull crash. Martha McConaughey was explaining precautions to the students, but she didn't expect the school bus to suddenly swing to one side. Caught off guard, she was hit hard into the car. With a bang, the forward hit made her dizzy and unstable. Clark and Zoo were also thrown to one side, but they quickly stabilized their bodies. Squeak! The school bus made a harsh braking sound on the road, and the black brake marks emitted a pungent smell of burning. In order to avoid the collision of the pickup truck, the school bus lost control and rushed under the bridge. At the critical moment, the driver with rich driving experience finally stopped the car. It was only a few inches away from rushing down the road. There was silence all around, and the students who had been screaming and crying before also stopped at the same time. Only the car engine, which was gradually cooling down, made a rumbling sound. The driver, still in shock, seemed to want to cry, but suddenly wanted to laugh. He successfully saved a school bus of students. He did it. However, before he could celebrate his success, the next second, the out-of-control pickup truck rushed over. Bang! The pickup truck full of paint hit the rear of the school bus. The door was dented, and broken glass fell into the car like rain. The air was reverberating with the sound of car horns and the loud noise of metal collision and deformation. Before the driver could finish the curse, the school bus made a creaking sound and fell into the river under the bridge. Bang! The school bus violently hit the surface of the river in Smallwool, making a deafening sound. The cold river water immediately poured into the school bus. The turbid river water quickly surrounded the students in the school bus. The terrified students screamed and became a mess. Some wanted to escape immediately, while others screamed and ran madly to the back of the school bus. But the speed of the river water rushing in exceeded everyone's expectations, and quickly submerged half of the school bus. Although old Holly, who was sitting in the front row, was shocked by the falling school bus, the bridge was not high and did not cause him to faint. He quickly took off his coat and rushed to the broken car window as fast as possible, regardless of the crying students. Escape from the sinking school bus and swim forward. He was very familiar with this river, so he easily escaped from the sinking area of the school bus. Splash! He emerged from the water and his old body turned into a young body again. He hesitated for a moment and wanted to go to save people. But when he thought that saving people like this now might lead to his identity being exposed, he finally shook his head, looked at the school bus, and swam to the shore. More and more water was poured into the school bus, and Martha McConaughey had already taken several mouthfuls of river water. The noisy crying and shouting reached her ears, making her head ache worse. Here, hurry! She endured the headache, grabbed a little girl's shoulder, and tried to push her out of the car window. But perhaps because of fear, the little girl held her arm tightly, with tears in her eyes and refused to let go. Clark, who was sitting in the back seat, wiped the water off his face and stared blankly at the scene between teacher Martha and the girl in front of him. Chapter 34 You Are the Real Hero. Clark stared blankly at teacher Martha in front of the school bus, not noticing that the water pouring into the school bus had already reached his chest. The students who were swallowed by the river screamed in fear and fled from the school bus. But the water quickly swept over and swept the students who tried to escape. Bang! Bang! The dull sound of glass being knocked awakened Clark from his daze. He looked up to the left and found that Zoo had escaped from the school bus and was knocking on the window with his fist in the water. Zoo pointed upwards and signaled him to swim up quickly. Clark hesitated for a moment, looked at Martha McConaughey, took a deep breath and dived underwater, then followed Zoo's instructions to escape from the school bus and swim upwards. Splash! Zoo and Clark emerged from the river. We have to leave here quickly, Clark. Zoo wiped the water off his face and said to Clark. No. We have to save them, Clark firmly disagreed. Mr. McConaughey and the others are still inside. This is none of our business. The Godfather said that everyone's life is important. We can't let it happen. Azu thought Clark was unreasonable. Then what do you want to do? You can't save them. I can. Clark looked at the sinking school bus and said anxiously, we can push the school bus to the shore. John, you can do it. His strength is gradually increasing, but there is still a gap compared to Azu. Clark knows that Azu's strength was beyond ordinary people when he was a child. As long as the two of them work together, they can push the school bus up and save everyone. No, I can't. Dad said that we can't expose our abilities. Azu shook his head. His expression was tangled, biting his lip and said, we can't do this, Clark. It will expose our abilities, but they are going to die. Clark pointed to the school bus that was crying and had sunk most of the way. He was anxious and didn't care about Azu. He took a deep breath and dived down. The water was pitch black and freezing cold. Clark dived into the murky water and felt as if a pair of terrifying hands grabbed him, pulling him forward and sinking. Under the bruised water, his vision was severely obscured. Clark swam to the back of the school bus, dragged the base with his hands, and pushed the school bus forward with all his strength. The school bus encountered great resistance in the water as it moved forward. Clark gritted his teeth and burst out all his strength to push the car forward slowly. As he pushed the school bus forward with difficulty, he suddenly saw a group of fish swimming towards him. The strange-shaped fish emitted a faint green light under the dark green water. It seemed that they were surprised to see humans underwater, so the fish swam towards Clark. Clark, who was pushing the school bus, suddenly thought of the mermaids that the Godfather had told Azu. I wonder if mermaids, if they exist, look like this strange fish. Just as he was daydreaming, the school of fish swam to Clark and touched his body. The moment he was touched, Clark felt a burst of weakness. The feeling of weakness he had experienced when holding Lana's necklace came back to him. Clark, stunned, looked at the school of fish with a faint green light. Could it be that this kind of fish also has that kind of green stone in its body? The next second, he felt that the school bus he was pushing suddenly became extremely heavy. The cold river water quickly surrounded him. And Clark tried his best to swim upwards, but his physical strength was quickly lost. He fell to the bottom of the water, his palms touched the mud, his fingertips touched the darkness, his skin touched his skin, and he felt surrounded by great darkness. The cold river water, mud, silt, and screams all attacked him. Everything was like broken glass, and no radio station with sound could be found. The school of fish swam around him, and everything under the water seemed to have changed. Clark gasped and tried to breathe, but he was powerless. His throat closed tightly, he felt his lungs were flattened, and his ears were squeezed to the edge of his eye sockets. Bang! Clark, whose consciousness was gradually becoming a little blurred, suddenly felt a pair of hands holding him. He tried to open his eyes and saw Zu holding his arm with one hand and swimming forward, while using the other hand to drive away the school of fish. After leaving the school of fish, the two swam together towards the sinking school bus. This time Zu did not leave directly, but pushed the rear of the school bus towards the shore with Clark, who was gradually recovering. After Zu joined, the school bus was pushed much faster. Martha McConaughey, who was in the school bus, was holding the girl and waiting for the final judgment of fate. The turbid water had already flooded her head, and she used all her strength to lift the girl above her head so that she could breathe more fresh air. But as her breathing became heavier, she soon felt her consciousness disperse. Just when she was about to collapse, she suddenly felt the school bus shaking. With a sound of creaking, the school bus was slowly lifted up, and the water in the car also poured out. Martha McConaughey, who was breathing heavily, immediately hugged the girl in her arms. "Anna, are you okay?" "I'm fine, Teacher Martha," the girl made a faint sound. "God, I hope you're okay." Holding the girl, Martha MacDonald looked at the rear of the bus, and the scene in front of her stunned her. Clark and Zu pushed the school bus together and pushed it towards the shore. The wall of the rear of the school bus was hit by the paint pickup truck, so not only she, but also several first-grade girls at the rear of the bus saw the two people pushing the school bus. God, Martha MacDonald felt that she must be dazzled, otherwise she would not have seen such an incredible scene. Several little girls who had just escaped death looked at the two people with shock and fear in their eyes. Old Holly on the shore forgot to throw away the burnt cigarette in his hand, and cast an unbelievable look at Clark and Zu, who pushed the school bus up. Peter was the first to receive the notice of the school bus accident. After calling Jonathan and his wife, he immediately drove to the scene. Police cars and ambulances were parked at the scene, and medical staff were sending injured students to the hospital. When Peter found Clark, the two were wearing towels and drinking hot water. Dad, Godfather, seeing Peter appear, the two of them immediately came over. So, Clark, John, Peter glanced at the school bus on the shore and immediately understood what happened. He cast his eyes on the two boys and asked, "You two saved the school bus and became heroes?" "No." Clark glanced at Azu and whispered, "I'm not. Azu is the real hero. Thank you all for your votes and support. I recommended it on the internet and dedicated a work. American Comics, Becoming the God of Technology from Osborne." After waking up, Harry became the Marvel Universe. He thought he could be free and messed up, but he didn't expect the consortium to fall into a financial crisis. Fortunately, he has a golden finger and can obtain black technology in his dreams. The star cannon of the Man in Black, the two-dimensional foil of the Singer civilization, and the Golden Fleet. Interested readers can help to make a sacrifice. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35. Clark's doubts about life. No, both of you are heroes. Peter ruffled Clark and Zoo's hair and looked at the girls wrapped in towels not far away. The other party looked at Clark and Zoo with fear in their eyes. But, sometimes, being a hero means losing something, he said to the two boys with a complicated expression. Dad, Zoo's expression was tangled, and he held the water cup with some force. You said that Clark and I can't expose our abilities. Sorry, I may have made a mistake. Unlike Clark's sense of accomplishment at this time, Zoo felt a little uncomfortable. He felt that he shouldn't expose his abilities. But Clark was in danger at that time. If he didn't save him and help him push the school bus to the shore, Clark might continue to be stubborn and push the school bus alone. For Clark's safety, he changed his mind to help him. But this doesn't mean that he thinks Clark is right. No, you saved Clark, didn't you? He just heard the two boys tell about the scene underwater. Although Dad thinks you should hide your abilities, we shouldn't feel upset or regretful about what has happened. Peter put his hand on Zoo's shoulder. Sometimes, John, we have to make choices at important points. He comforted Zoo. We can make any choice, whether it is right, wrong, evil or righteous, but you need to know that any choice you make will have to pay a price in the future. Although he did not approve of Zoo and Clark exposing their abilities, he understood this special situation. If the two boys chose to stand by and watch, he would feel that he had spoiled them. Price? Zoo didn't notice that his father was lost in thought. Although he didn't quite understand what his father said, he still repeated the word. Mr. Padrick, Martha McConaughey, who had simply bandaged the wound, came over to greet Peter. With a strange look on her face, she glanced at Clark and Zoo next to her. The scene of the two boys pushing the school bus just now was still replaying in her mind. But when she thought that the two boys were Peter's children, it seemed to become more normal. After all, this guy killed a group of gangsters by himself. After adjusting her mood, she said to Peter in a normal tone, I'm sorry that I didn't protect Clark and John. She decided to hide the scene for the two of them. After all, Peter had saved herself from the gangsters before. No, I know it has nothing to do with Teacher McConaughey, Peter said to her. We all don't want to see a car accident happen. Since the other party was playing dumb, Peter also cooperated with her. After the two of them said a few words and Martha McConaughey left, Zoo whispered to Peter, Dad, Teacher McConaughey's heartbeat was very fast just now. Zoo's auditory system became more and more abnormal as he grew older. Now he can easily capture the sound of human heartbeats. Yes, I know, Peter nodded. Maybe Teacher McConaughey hasn't recovered from the accident just now. When Zoo wanted to say something else, Martha and Kenneth had already driven over. God, excited Martha hugged Clark. Are you okay, Clark? I'm fine, Mom. Jonathan next to him breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Peter. Peter, what happened? At the same time, old Holly next to the ambulance was taking a towel from the medical staff. While thanking the medical staff, he cast a solemn look at Peter, Jonathan and others in the distance. At night, Kent Farm. Clark was having dinner with his parents. The atmosphere at the dinner table was a little solemn. Before dinner, the mother of the girl who saw Clark and Azu pushing the school bus brought her daughter to the Kent family, wanting to know if the school bus was pushed up by Clark. The result, of course, was that the Kent couple denied it. Jonathan put down his knife and fork, and said to Clark, who was lowering his head, remember what we said before? You must hide that side of you. You can't let people see your abilities. Clark bit his lip and looked up. Then what should I do? Watch them die? Just like little Terry. Who is little Terry? Jonathan was stunned for a moment, and then he stopped dwelling on this question and continued, if everyone knew your abilities, everything would change. Did you see Claire's expression? She was scared. I don't understand. Clark didn't understand Jonathan's intentions. He said to his father, I saved her. Why is she afraid? Because people are afraid of unknown things. Clark's mood became worse. Am I not a human being, Dad? Hearing Clark ask this, the couple were stunned, and then looked at each other. Jonathan said to him, no, of course you are human, Clark. I'm not human, Dad, Clark said excitedly. John and we are not. I'm not your son, Dad. I've always known. Hearing Clark's words, the couple was stunned. Jonathan thought that the other party knew about the alien spacecraft hidden in the barn. But Clark's next words made him laugh and cry. I know that I should be the Godfather's son, because you and I have powers that others don't have. Since the zombie incident in the auditorium, Clark witnessed Peter chopping zombies with a samurai sword and blocking the impact of the explosion with his arms. and he suspected that he was the Godfather's biological son. After all, the Godfather, like himself, has very ordinary powers and hard skin. Clark, who likes to imagine, even suspected that he was taken away by mistake in the hospital, which led to his current father becoming his father. No, of course not, Martha quickly denied it. If she didn't explain it to Clark quickly, she was afraid that her innocence would be gone. Jonathan coughed. Clark, you are your parents' child, always have been. Clark lowered his head and muttered softly, if it was the Godfather, he wouldn't think I was wrong. Hearing his son's mumbling, the couple looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Jonathan asked him, did the Godfather say you were right? Clark, no, the Godfather said that my choice in that situation was neither right nor wrong, but if I did it, I might lose something. In the new week, I'm begging for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets from readers. Thank you so much. Chapter 36 God is dead, Superman is born. You are too stubborn, Jonathan. After Clark entered his room, Martha said to her husband, in order to protect Clark, you don't want him to expose his abilities, but Clark is very kind-hearted. Helping and saving others is what he likes to do. You can't always stop him from doing this, Jonathan sighed. Of course I know, but Clark is not ready yet. He is not ready to understand life. We all know that, Martha. He held his wife's hand and said, Clark came from outer space. He must have some mission, and maybe John too. They are destined to change the world in the future. Martha smiled wryly at her husband and said, haven't you seen it yet? Under the influence of Peter, Clark began to yearn for a different life. He doesn't want to stay on the farm and be an ordinary child. She understood her husband, and she knew what Clark was thinking now. If you keep suppressing him, Jonathan, Clark will eventually find that family is not only a warm harbor, but also a shackle that binds him. As he grows older, he will no longer rely on and crave our care. He will be eager to get out of the greenhouse and help more people. Jonathan knew that his wife's words made sense, but he still shook his head. Not now. Peter has not taught him how to face society. You know, Martha, even if our son has a body of steel, people will destroy this alien to pieces. You always have your own reasons, Jonathan. Martha knew that she couldn't win the argument with her husband, so she didn't continue to discuss this topic with him. Speaking of you, you have always been reluctant to leave the farm, Jonathan. You haven't even gone out to travel. Facing his wife's teasing, Jonathan shrugged his shoulders. Traveling for most people means traveling around the world, but for me, you are the world. Martha didn't expect that her husband, who usually didn't understand romance, could say such romantic words. Her face was slightly red. I was deceived by you to come to the farm when I was in college. Do you regret it? Martha pretended to think. A little, but even if I go back to the past, I will probably be deceived by you again. She stood up while speaking. I have to go see Clark. Upstairs, Martha knocked on the door gently and pushed it open. Clark was reading a book with a small desk lamp on. When he saw his mother come in, he put the book next to his pillow. Mom, what book are you reading, Clark? Martha asked him curiously. Nietzsche's book. Clark showed the cover of the book to his mother. Martha looked at the cover of Thus Spoke Zarathustra and her expression was slightly dull. Can you understand Nietzsche, Clark? She didn't believe that Clark, who was less than 7 years old, could understand such a philosophical book. No, it was recommended to me by my godfather, but I like it very much. Clark said that it was recommended by his godfather. Peter. Martha thought Peter might have overestimated Clark. How could a child understand Nietzsche? Mom, Clark held a book and asked Martha, can I ask you a question? Of course. Martha stroked Clark's hair. Why did Nietzsche say God is dead, and we now hope that Superman will be born? Martha was stumped by Clark's question. She was not a philosophy major in college, so she didn't know how to answer this question. Ahem. It's too late, Clark, you have to go to bed. Can I answer this question tomorrow? Martha, who was quick-witted, adopted the strategy of delaying. Okay, Mom. Clark put Nietzsche under his pillow and prepared to go to bed. I'll ask the Godfather tomorrow. Hearing Clark say this, Martha suddenly felt bad. A sense of frustration as a parent surged in her heart. At the same time, Peter didn't know that Clark was going to discuss Nietzsche with him tomorrow. He was now standing by the river where the school bus had an accident during the day. The gurgling river water flowed forward, rolling up foam and swirling to the shore. On the shore where the school bus was pushed up, car parts and garbage were scattered in a mess. Peter stared at the river and fell into deep thought. Clark was touched by the green fish at the bottom of the water, and his body immediately fell into a weak state. This means that the fish in the Smallville River are irradiated by kryptonite. And there is a high possibility that kryptonite exists at the bottom of the water. Taking a deep breath, he took off his coat, revealing his upper body full of strong muscles. With a plop, he jumped into the river. The cold river water at night immediately wrapped in the chill. At this time, because of the watch, his physical fitness was strengthened several times, so he would naturally not be attacked by the cold. Diving into the water, he began to search for traces of kryptonite. The visibility underwater at night was extremely poor. Although Peter's eyesight was different from that of ordinary people, it was difficult to find traces of kryptonite. After searching for a while, he was fruitless. Just when he wondered if his guess was wrong, he suddenly saw a group of fish with a faint green glow swimming over. The fish circled around him and then swam forward slowly. Peter immediately followed the fish to see if he could find traces of kryptonite. After all, this thing is a rare thing. Rather than being caught by Batman and Clark's enemies in the future and then used against Clark, it is better to hold it in his own hands first. Not only is it valuable for collection, but grinding it into powder for Clark to use can also enhance the opponent's kryptonite resistance. Following the fish swimming under the water, Peter soon found a coral reef-sized kryptonite under a lush water grass. Looking at the large amount of kryptonite emitting a glittering green light, Peter's eyes widened. Even if all these kryptonites were ground into powder, it would be enough for Clark to drink for a year or two. Wow, Peter popped up, holding the green glowing kryptonite in his hand. Swimming to the shore, he put the kryptonite on the ground and wiped the water off his head. Breaking off a piece of kryptonite and putting it in front of his eyes, Peter stared at the stone emitting a brilliant green light and fell into thought. Officer Chandler once said that the suspect who robbed the bank just jumped into this river and disappeared. Thinking of this guy's superhuman physical fitness, could it be that the robbers were affected by the kryptonite in the Smallville River, causing mutations and thus possessing such superhuman powers? He moved the kryptonite away from his eyes and stared at the downstream of the river. The swamp before was contaminated by kryptonite radiation, which caused the land to change and resurrected the bodies buried in it. So even if the kryptonite under the water gives human superpowers, this seems possible. Putting away the kryptonite, he shook his head. Then why didn't the students in the school bus who fell into the river during the day, and himself who had just swam in it, change their bodies? Hula, under the silver moonlight, a small green fish jumped out of the water and gently rippled the water. Thank you all for your votes, and thank you, the new author. Chapter 37 What If I Say No? It's beautiful. At Patrick's farm, Zoo looked at the green fish in the fish tank. When Peter returned from the Smallville River, he casually grabbed 2 kryptonite-irradiated fish and threw them into the fish tank. Zoo asked Peter curiously and excitedly, "Dad, what kind of fish is this?" Peter looked at the appearance of the fish and said, "It should be a gouge-mouthed fish." The odd-looking gouge-mouthed fish was attracted and stared at Peter's finger touching the fish tank through the glass. "This is the first time I've seen this kind of fish." Zoo wanted to put his hand in, but he resisted the urge and looked up at Peter and said, "Dad, is this a mermaid?" "This is not a mermaid." Peter shook his head. "Mermaids grow in the sea. Then do mermaids really exist in this world, Dad?" Zoo continued to ask curiously. Peter thought about it and realized that since there was a sea king in this world, mermaid creatures naturally existed. It's just that this kind of mermaid will not make people immortal like the mermaids in the story. Peter stroked his hair and said, "Then you need to explore it." Zoo nodded and said in a confident tone, "If it really exists, I will definitely help Dad catch one and keep it in the fish tank." "Really? Then I'm looking forward to it." He really wanted to say to Azu, "Dad is immortal, so can we catch a mermaid instead?" But considering that it would seem too contemptuous, he had to swallow what he wanted to say. "Dad," Azu didn't know that his father was thinking about something messy. He turned around and asked Peter with some confusion, "Didn't you say that Clark and I are not allowed to reveal our abilities? Why didn't you criticize us when Clark and I made a mistake?" Looking at the little fish that almost made Clark sink to the bottom of the river, Azu remembered the scene that happened during the day. "Because you and Clark are still children, it is unrealistic to use adult rationality to restrain you," Peter said to him. "When a crisis occurs, adults cannot make the best solution. Most people act according to the deep-rooted instinct in their hearts. You and Clark just follow your inner instinct." Zeus scratched his head and was a little confused. He thought about it and continued to ask, "Then why did Dad say that you are neither right nor wrong, but we will lose something?" Peter looked at Zeus with a face full of curiosity. This kid is now like Clark, incarnating 100,000 whys. You and Clark chose to save people, but those who were saved by you will be grateful and afraid. When you are regarded as an alien, it is difficult for you to adjust your mentality, and your peaceful life will never return. Zhu nodded when he heard this. He probably understood what his father meant. Dad was saying that he would lose his current peaceful life. It doesn't matter, as long as Dad is with me. Zhu didn't think it was a big deal. Peter saw that Zhu's face was no longer tangled, and knew that the boy had changed his mind. Okay, it's getting late, John, go upstairs and sleep. He patted Zhu's shoulder and told him to go to sleep. Okay, Zhu nodded obediently. When he was about to go upstairs, he suddenly turned around and said to Peter in a firm tone, Dad, if the school bus falls into the river next time, I won't save it. I will only save it if Dad is in it. Ling. Ling. Ding. Zhu ran upstairs after saying that. Peter, who was standing by the fish tank, suddenly felt complicated. Are you cursing me or saving me? The next day, Clark and Zhu were sent to participate in the psychological counseling organized by the school. At Kent Farm, Jonathan and Martha were busy loading soybeans into the car compartment. While the two were busy, an uninvited guest came to the farm. Mr. Kent, Mrs. Kent, a black youth wearing sunglasses walked into the farm and greeted the two. Who are you? Jonathan stopped what he was doing and looked at the stranger in surprise. The black youth took off his glasses. I'm Horry Hawkins, the old Horry, who had turned back into a young man, gave himself a fake name. I'm from the Smallville Police Department, and I want to find you to understand the situation. He took out a fake police officer's ID, showed it to Jonathan, and then put it away. I want to talk to you about the school bus accident yesterday. Isn't Clark here? Seeing that the police came specifically for this matter, Martha cast an uneasy look at her husband. Jonathan patted his wife's arm and said in a calm tone, Our child is also a victim of the car accident. He is now receiving psychological counseling. I think if you want to ask him some questions, it's not appropriate now. Horry nodded and said to Jonathan, I'm not looking for Clark to understand the situation, but you. In the living room, Jonathan and Martha looked at each other. Jonathan asked hesitantly, What do you want to know, Officer Hawkins? Holly picked up the coffee cup and said in a leisurely tone, I checked the adoption records of the Smallville orphanage 6 years ago. From April to July, only one girl was adopted. He took out a printed data sheet and put it on the table. According to your registration information, you adopted a baby boy from the orphanage in July 6 years ago, and the orphanage also provided you with a certificate. How strange. He took a sip of coffee gently. Why did you adopt a baby boy? But the number of babies in the orphanage did not decrease. Hearing this, Martha held her husband's hand tightly. She knew that he must have found out something. Horry continued, There is only one explanation. Clark was not adopted from the orphanage by you. You all lied. Jonathan frowned and stared at him. What do you want to say? Calm down, Mr. Kent, we are not enemies. Horry put down his coffee cup. I know Clark is gifted. He is destined to make a career and change the world. He should not stay on a farm in obscurity. Horry stated his purpose. I can help him, and we will make the world a better place together. Jonathan shook his head. I don't know what you are talking about. Besides, Clark is just a child. He is not as extraordinary as you say. We all know who he is, so there is no need to hide it from me, Mr. Kent. Jonathan stood up suddenly without waiting for the other party to finish, pointing at the door with a grim face. I think you should leave. Seeing Jonathan's order to leave, Horace stood up slowly. What if I say no? Thank you all for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Bow. Thank you Flip Goldfish and Jin Gin for the reward. Bow to thank you. Favored menstruation. Chapter 38. Stubborn Jonathan is finally pinned down. The atmosphere froze in an instant. Don't be so nervous, Mr. Kent, I'm just joking. Horry, who had a serious expression, suddenly relaxed. Anyway, I hope Mr. and Mrs. Kent can think about it carefully. I will visit again. As he said that, he was ready to leave. When he walked to the door, he put on sunglasses and turned to Jonathan and his wife and said, But don't worry too much. I will keep this a secret. After Horry left, Martha, who was worried, asked her husband, Do you want to tell Peter? Jonathan nodded seriously. I'll contact him right away. 10 minutes later, Peter drove to Kent Farm. After listening to Kent's story, he frowned slightly. Clark's welfare home certificate was originally obtained by him using his money power. I didn't expect this guy to be able to find a loophole. It seems that I have to fill this loophole afterwards. After thinking for a moment, he took out his cell phone and called Chandler at the police station to ask if there was a policeman named Horie Hawkins at the Smallville police station. After getting a negative answer, he hung up the call, shook his head and said to the couple, "There is no policeman named Horie Hawkins at the police station. Obviously, this guy is a fake policeman." Fake policeman. Martha was even more confused. Who is he? No matter who he is, his target is Clark and John. Jonathan held his wife's hand, conveying warmth to her, and said to Peter, "I guess he will come to you again." Peter nodded. "That's great. I just want to talk to him." If this guy dared to show up in front of him, he didn't mind using a little violence on him. Let him know the price of daring to hit his son and godson. This guy is in the dark. We don't know his identity. For your safety, I suggest you and Clark move to my house temporarily. Peter suggested that the Kent family move to his farm first. In this way, if the Blacks want to use force, he can also protect the safety of the Kent couple. Clark and Martha will stay at your place for the time being. Peter, I don't have to. Jonathan rejected Peter's proposal. I can't leave the farm yet. Martha opened her mouth and wanted to persuade her husband. But thinking of her husband's temper, she could only swallow what she wanted to say helplessly. Peter frowned and looked at him. Don't be stubborn, Jonathan. This is for your safety. I know. Thank you, Peter, but I believe this fake policeman won't do anything reckless. Since he said he wanted to keep it secret, it means he still has something to fear. Jonathan decided to stay here and deal with that bastard for his son. No matter what means the other party used, he would take it. Martha cast an apologetic look at Peter. Since her husband chose to stay at the farm, she couldn't go to Peter's house. Sorry, Peter, Jonathan is so stubborn. Clark will go to your place first. I will stay here with Jonathan. Peter was silent for a few seconds, then nodded and said, I know, we will keep in touch. Since Jonathan wanted to stay on the farm, he had no way to convince the other party, so he could only go back first and think of a way. The next day. Nothing happened during the day. At night, Jonathan moved the farm tools to the warehouse in the backyard. The dim moonlight shone in, and the ground was covered with a layer of silver light. The cicadas were replaced by crickets, and the breeze blew to wipe his sweat. Jonathan, who was packing up the farm tools, suddenly heard footsteps outside. He stopped what he was doing and looked up at the entrance of the warehouse. Mr. Kent, a familiar voice came into his ears. In his astonished eyes, the black fake policeman who appeared yesterday stood at the door. The moment he saw the other party appear, Jonathan immediately became alert. Why did you come here, Mr. Hawkins? I just want to talk to you. Horie coughed and took off his sunglasses. I think we can reach an agreement on Clark. I have nothing to talk to you about. Jonathan frowned. Clark is just a child. He doesn't know anything. Don't bring him into your dirty world. You're right, Mr. Kent. This is a dirty world. Horie's expression became serious. This is a powerful world full of injustice and discrimination. The police and judges trample on the law at will, and the bankers squander the hard-earned money of the bottom. He has experienced decades of imprisonment, and the property left to him by his parents was also taken away by the bank. These experiences made his heart full of resentment. So, we need to change this world, Mr. Kent. Clark and I are the same. We are all chosen people. We have the ability to change this world. I swear, in my hands, he will show his talent. Jonathan looked at this crazy man in astonishment. You must be crazy. While Jonathan was speaking, he was unnoticeably preparing to pick up the pitchfork next to him. As if seeing through his movements, Horie teleported in front of him like lightning the next second. Jonathan, who had no time to react, only felt a pain in his chest and was knocked out. With a bang, his body hit the ground heavily. Fortunately, there were crop straws on the ground, which cushioned some of the damage. But the pain in his chest still made him a little breathless. You? Jonathan looked at Horie, who was walking slowly in shock. The opponent's speed was like lightning, and he just felt that he flew out in a flash. Yes, I also have extraordinary powers, just like Clark. Horie walked in front of Jonathan and squatted down, with a faint green light in his eyes. Sorry, Mr. Kent, I don't have much patience now, so I can only ask you and Mrs. Kent to go. Jonathan breathed quickly and wanted to stand up to resist, but his eyes went black and he fainted. Padwick Farm. Peter didn't know what happened to Jonathan and his wife. He was having dinner with Clark and Azu. Knock. Knock. There was a knock on the door. Peter went forward and opened the door, and found that it was a boy in his teens who lived in a nearby neighbor's house. You are little Sam, right? The shy boy with freckles on his face nodded and handed a letter to Peter. "Uncle Patrick, this is a letter from a stranger outside that I gave you." "Stranger?" Peter took the letter and looked out into the dark night. "Where's that stranger, Sam?" Sam turned around and pointed to a fork in the road in the distance, saying, "He was there just now, and then he disappeared all of a sudden." Peter glanced at the deserted fork in the road, then gave Sam a few honey sticks to send him away, and sat back at the dining table. He opened the letter and looked at the content on it, and his brows gradually frowned. "Dad, what does it say?" Azu asked curiously. "Someone kidnapped Clark's parents." Bang! Clark's knife and fork fell on the dining table. Chapter 39 Reason and Instinct. "Godfather, my parents were kidnapped." Clark stood up and looked at Peter helplessly. "Dad, who did it?" Azu's little face also tensed up. "I don't know." Peter put the letter away and frowned slightly. The other party told him in the letter that Jonathan and Martha were kidnapped, and asked him to send Clark and Azu to the designated location before 11 o'clock in the evening. "Is it the black man Jonathan mentioned yesterday?" Thinking about it, looking up and seeing Clark's uneasiness and confusion, Peter reached out and stroked his hair. "Don't worry, Godfather will bring Mom and Dad back." Clark's eyes were instantly blurred with tears. "Godfather, you trust the Godfather, right?" "Clark, look into my eyes. Do you believe in the Godfather?" Peter squatted down and held his hand. Yes, I believe in the Godfather." Clark quickly calmed down under Peter's comfort. "Very good. Godfather promises you that I will bring Mom and Dad back before 11 o'clock, but you must stay on the farm with Zoo." Peter straightened Clark's messy collar. "You are the older brother, take good care of Zoo. Can you do it?" Of course he would not take Clark and Zoo with him. Although he could ensure the safety of the two boys no matter what traps the other party arranged, it was better to avoid letting the elementary school students face such a bloody scene directly. "I can, but Godfather, I want to go with you." Clark's eyes showed a firm look. "I can help you, and I can punish the bad guys who kidnapped Mom and Dad, and me, Dad." Zoo also volunteered to come up. "Dad, I can help you deal with them, and I can protect you." "Dad can protect himself. Don't you two have confidence in Dad?" Zoo's expression was tangled. "But Dad, he believed in Peter, but he was also afraid that his father would end up like Uncle Jonathan and the others, being tied up by the bad guys." The tangled and contradictory mood made him not know how to explain it. After Peter comforted Azu and Clark, he picked up his coat, went to the yard, started the car and rushed outside. It began to rain, and the rain hit the windshield. The wipers swayed back and forth, and the rustling sound of the tires soaked with rain came into his ears. 10 minutes later, Peter drove the car to the gravel on the shoulder of the road and turned off the engine. The transaction location mentioned by the other party was the abandoned factory in front of him. Peter got out of the car and walked to an empty muddy road. Soon a row of barbed wire appeared in front of him. The barbed wire fence and a gate prevented anyone from entering the factory. The top of the fence was clumsily wrapped with circles of rusty wire. The sign was inserted into the ground and tied to the fence. These signs were made of fragments of plywood or scrap metal. The messages painted on the signs were not dry yet, and the size of each letter was inconsistent. Some words were large, some were small. "No hunting." The first one. "God is watching you. God knows who is lying. Is there life after death? Once discovered, intruders stop. Otherwise, you will be severely punished. It is strictly forbidden to climb over this fence." Looking at the words on the sign, Peter shook his head slightly. God is watching him? He pushed forward casually, and the door was rushed out several meters away with a bang and fell heavily to the ground. God is dead, and now Superman is born, walking into the abandoned factory. Peter saw a figure standing on the high platform in the factory. "Peter Patrick." Hori turned around and looked at Peter, who came alone in surprise. "You don't seem to have brought Clark and John as we agreed." Peter didn't say anything. He looked at Hori's face and frowned. Although it was the first time he saw this guy, he always felt that he looked familiar. "What do you want?" "I think I can satisfy you alone." Peter took a step forward and said to him. "No." Hori shook his head. "Neither you nor the Kents are what I want. Clark and John are. You didn't do what I said, so I can only say I'm sorry." Peter sneered. "I'm looking forward to how you're going to express regret." Meanwhile, at Patrick's farm, Zoo put on his shoes and coat, ready to go to support his father. He pushed open the door and walked into the courtyard, but was stopped by Clark, who was coming downstairs. "John, you can't leave the farm." Clark grabbed Zoo's arm. "The Godfather told us to stay on the farm. Dad needs our help, otherwise he might be kidnapped." and we can't stay on the farm," Zeus said excitedly. "He needs us. Dad is in the school bus now. The school bus is about to fall into the river, and I have to save him. The Godfather doesn't need you to save him, and he's not in the school bus. He told us to trust him." Although Clark wanted to save his parents immediately at first, he calmed down now and chose to believe the Godfather. "Don't you trust the Godfather?" "No, this is not trust, Clark. Dad said that sometimes, when a crisis occurs, most people act according to the instincts deeply rooted in their hearts. I'm just following my instincts." Zeus bit his lip and wiped the rain off his face. "You are wrong, Clark." Clark's hair was wet by the rain, and the expression on his face was unusually firm. "The Godfather asked me to take care of you. I can't let you leave." "I believe in the Godfather, and you don't believe in him, John." "You are wrong, you idiot. Why don't you understand that everything is your fault?" Zeus' blood was boiling and his face flushed. "If you hadn't insisted on pushing the school bus up, your parents wouldn't have been kidnapped. This is the price that Dad said." Clark was stunned in place. "What? This is the price I said? Clark, you idiot. Do you understand?" Clark's face was also flushed by Zeus. "This is not the price. What do you want me to do? Watch them all die? What does the death of others have to do with us?" The Godfather said that human life is extremely precious. That's someone else's life. Life is the same for everyone. They are all equally important. So you're willing to let your parents die for a carload of people? Shut up, John. You're the only one who shuts up. Zeus was a little irrational, and he stretched out his hand to push Clark out. Bang! With a burst of super strength, Clark was pushed dozens of meters away. With a bang, Clark's body crashed through the barn wall and fell to the ground, making a deafening sound. Chapter 40, Demolition and Progress. Cough cough. Clark stood up while holding his chest and coughing. His super strong defense made him almost unscathed, but his chest felt a little stuffy. But Azu's attack also made his anger burst out. Clark jumped out of the barn and rushed towards Azu quickly. Bang! Azu was hit on the right face by Clark's heavy punch. He was hit like a top and spun several times in the air. He flew out and hit the ground heavily. Mud and water burst into the air, and a dull impact sounded. Azu, who was a little dazed by the beating, looked at the panting Clark in shock. Is this still the Clark who never fights back in a fight and has to rely on himself for help? Liar. Liar. It turns out that you have always been good at fighting, Clark. Azu, who felt deceived, clenched his fists, stood up from the ground and glared at the other party. I'm not a liar, Clark panted slightly and wiped the rain off his head. I just control myself. The Godfather said that I can control myself. This is lying. The angry Azu's eyes glowed with a burning red light. Zizzy, the red laser that tore through the air rushed to Clark in just a moment. Seeing this, Clark immediately dodged, but was still hit on the shoulder and rolled into the living room. The deflected thermal vision rushed out of the living room with the remaining momentum and rushed towards the wall of the warehouse behind. With a sound of ding ding bang bang, the dining table and sofa in the living room were instantly shattered. Clark rolled into the living room and hit his back on the TV cabinet, smashing it to pieces. Broken furniture fragments and electrical materials fell to the ground, and the originally neat and clean living room instantly became a mess. Bang! Azu jumped into the living room, and before he found Clark's figure, he felt a flow of air. At this time, Clark was also angry and punched Azu heavily. Azu tried to block the blow with his hand, but the next second his body was smashed out of control. With a bang, Azu was deeply knocked into the wooden staircase by the punch, smashing the staircase into pieces. Azu endured the pain and quickly turned over. Although it was his first fight, he and Clark had watched a lot of boxing shows with their father before, and knew how to attack the enemy effectively. Azu quickly moved in front of Clark and punched the opponent's chin with a fast and heavy fist. Clark subconsciously raised his arm to block. Bang! The air burst, and the sound of flesh colliding shattered the glass in the room. Although Clark blocked the fist with his arm, he was still knocked to the ground. While cracking the floor, he immediately stood up unscathed and rushed towards the opponent. Azu, with red eyes, blocked the opponent, and after a struggle, their fingers were clasped together. Because Azu developed faster than Clark, he had a slight advantage in conventional strength. You can't beat me, Clark. I've always been stronger than you, Zeus said while panting, trying to suppress him. No, you're not. Clark gritted his teeth, used all his strength, and grabbed Zeus' arm and jumped up. With the power of super jump, Clark grabbed Zeus' arm and jumped to the second floor. The floor of the corridor was hit by the two people and a big hole was made. Clark suddenly exploded and threw Zhu out like a sack. Bang! The floor was cracked. Zhu fell on the floor covered with spider web cracks and felt a burning pain in his back. In fact, the pain in the back was secondary, and the main thing was the mental blow. The shame of being slapped in the face just after he finished talking Ben made his face red and hot. In the abandoned factory, Peter didn't know at this time that his two sons had already started fighting before he started. And the two naughty kids were about to tear down his house. He took a step closer to Hori and asked, "Who are you?" "As far as I know, there shouldn't be any black people like you in Smallwood. Who knows? Maybe, I'm not supposed to exist in this era." Hori jumped down from the platform and said in a leisurely tone, "It was fate that made me come back here to take revenge on this era." Fate? Peter frowned and looked at him. What fate? Could this black man be like Father Norma and know some black magic? There are many explanations for fate, Mr. Patrick. I think the explanation is, what a person will experience in his life is predetermined. God has already arranged our fate. Even the conversation between you and me now is arranged, and no one can change it, he said in a low voice. Just like when I accidentally passed by the Smallwood River, I fell in and was bitten by a group of green glowing fish. I thought I would be buried in the belly of the fish, but I didn't expect to be able to restore my youth. Peter listened to him quietly. When he heard the other party talk about restoring youth, his eyes became more solemn. Hori paused for a moment and said to Peter, "Clark and John were also chosen by fate, just like me." "I know. I have seen Clark's reaction to the green meteorite." Before he could finish, Peter interrupted him. "You are old Hori, right? The guard of Smallwood Elementary School." He had already guessed the identity of this guy. The only person who had experienced the school bus incident and witnessed Clark being weakened by kryptonite, apart from Martha McConaughey, was old Hori. Martha couldn't turn into a black person to play a boring dress-up game with him, so it could only be old Hori. Although old Hori couldn't be as young as the black man in front of him, combined with the rejuvenation this guy said, although the matter was absurd, it was not impossible. Hearing Peter reveal his identity, old Hori was stunned for a moment, then looked at him with complicated eyes. "Well, I am old Hori, and I didn't intend to hide it. After all, you are all going to die here, but why are you not afraid at all?" "Okay, Mr. Old Hori," Peter sighed and said to him, "since you are so frank, I will also tell you two secrets. First, I hate black people." Then, in old Hori's angry eyes of "How dare you discriminate against black people," Peter teleported in front of him like lightning. With a bang, Peter's fist hit old Hori's heart. The air in old Hori's lungs seemed to be sucked out all at once. Feeling a sharp pain, he wanted to bend down to breathe, but he couldn't do it at all, so he had to cough violently. It was as if there was an animal hidden in his chest, and he was trying every means to expel it. The second secret is that I am not a normal person either. Thank you readers for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Bow. Chapter 41, First Special Attack on Clark. "You?" Coughing violently, Hori looked at Peter in shock. He could never have imagined that the other party had the same extraordinary power as himself. In a sense, the heart is a perfect place. Peter looked down at Hori, who was half kneeling on the ground and panting, and said, "Especially when your target is untrained, there are a lot of nerves here. Boxers pay great attention to strengthening this area. They train the muscles here to be as hard as armor, but for amateurs, the heart is the most effective target." As a boxing enthusiast, Peter popularized the knowledge of fighting to the other party. Feeling despite, Hori endured the pain in his chest and attacked Peter at super speed. Hori's speed was as fast as lightning in the eyes of ordinary people, but in Peter's eyes, it was as slow as a snail. The ability given to him by the kryptonite radiation merman gave him superhuman abilities, but facing Peter, who was constantly strengthened by the watch and was almost superhuman, this speed was not enough. Peter blocked his attack and hit the opponent's chin with his fist, knocking him stiff, and then swung his left fist. With a loud bang, Hori flew out like a cannonball. He broke a pillar, plowed a deep ditch, and rolled into a factory. The wall collapsed with a loud bang, and the discarded steel pipes piled up in the factory were scattered and rolled down, completely crushing him underneath. Peter was just worrying that he might have hit him too hard and killed him, when the discarded materials were washed away with a bang, and Hori, who was buried underneath, rushed towards Peter with a roar. Hori, with his clothes torn and his face bruised and swollen, used all his strength to punch Peter. Bang! The next second, Peter grabbed the opponent's wrist, stretched out his left hand like a knife, and chopped him at the throat. Hori, who was showing his power, immediately knelt on the ground and began to pant. His face turned red, as if he was about to pop out of his eye sockets. This is the mastoid process. It protects the trachea. Hitting it will cause the target to suffocate or vomit. In combat, the vomiting reflex will restrict a person's movements. This will cause severe panic in the human body, thus creating an absolute advantage for the attacker. Hori, with red eyes, finally calmed down. He tried to suppress the acid in his stomach. Why, you fucking need to explain, because I want you to be afraid of me. If you beat a dog to death, he will be afraid of everyone and become as weak as he can be. Peter looked down at Hori and asked him, where are Jonathan and Martha? Hori hadn't finished speaking when Peter punched him in the armpit. The armpit is also where the nerves are concentrated. Fuck. What on earth do you want to do? Don't you want me to speak, just to deepen the impression and prevent you from talking nonsense? Okay, tell me, Mr. Hori, where did you hide Martha and Jonathan? Hori, feeling terrified and humiliated, finally told the location of Martha and Jonathan weakly. You are the guy who robbed Luther Bank and the jewelry store before, right? Peter continued to ask the other party after making sure that the Kent couple was fine for the time being. Based on the other party's superhuman physical fitness, Peter guessed that this old guy was the murderer of the previous serial robbery. Yes, that's me. Hori admitted with a complicated expression that he was the murderer of the previous bank robbery. I just want those bankers to pay a price. They robbed my house and made me homeless. Peter nodded. He was not interested in the dirty things between Hori and the banker. He said to him directly, now, take me to get back the money and jewelry you robbed in the bank. Hearing Peter's request, Hori was stunned. Isn't the most important thing you should do now to rescue the Kent couple first? Hori instantly labeled Peter as a scumbag in his heart. Padwick Farm. Azu has gradually suppressed Clark to a disadvantage. Bang, blocking Clark's fist, Zu said angrily, I have always been stronger than you, Clark. Dad always said that your talent is extraordinary. Now I will prove that your talent will never be as good as mine. At this time, Zu was completely overwhelmed. He grabbed Clark's fist and threw him to the ground heavily. Clark's body smashed the floor like a spider web, and the furniture was also knocked away by him. No, you are wrong, Zu. Clark endured the pain in his back and staggered to his feet. He was also angry at Zu's beating. His rationality had long been thrown into outer space. He yelled at Zu, my talent is extraordinary, because I am the son of the Godfather. The Godfather is the same as me. We have the same ability. What? Zu was stunned by Clark's words. The last time the Godfather fought the zombies in the auditorium, he showed super strength and super defense. We all have this ability. Clark said all the words that he had been holding back in his heart. Seeing that Clark was going to compete with him for his father and the inheritance of the farm, Zu suddenly became anxious. Shut up. Clark, you are not. You are Jonathan's son. They are all my father. Lies. Liars. Azu rushed up with a red face and punched Clark hard in the chest. Clark took a step back with his thick skin and flesh, and pinched Azu's shoulders, trying to throw him out. Azu hugged Clark's head and gritted his teeth to hide him with a headbutt. Bang! After a dull sound, both of them retreated with their heads covered. Azu, who was dizzy, felt that the damn butterflies and bees were buzzing above his head again. He retreated, held the handrail of the stairs, and covered his head to make himself more awake. Clark was also uncomfortable. The world kept spinning in front of his eyes, as if it was turned upside down. His ears were buzzing, and even Azu's figure became blurred. Huff. Huff. Azu, who was panting heavily, covered his forehead, and his eyes suddenly saw the fish tank that had not been broken. In the fish tank, small fish with a faint green light were swimming around. An idea suddenly came to his mind, and he moved to the front of the fish tank as fast as he could, scooped out the small fish, and threw it towards Clark. Clark did not notice Zu's action, he only felt the green light flashing in front of him. Then a feeling of weakness came over him. He immediately fell to the ground in pain with weakness all over his body. Zu looked at Clark, who fell to the ground, gasping for breath, and said, No, Clark, you are not Daddy's son, because Daddy is never afraid of it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 I Am Also a Demon. Peter didn't know yet that his merriman had been used by Azu to deal with Clark. Now he was in Old Hori's house, watching him open the safe. Old Hori showed Peter the green US dollars and jewelry. "These are all the things I robbed, but you can't take it." Peter frowned. "Why not?" "Mr. Hori, I think you got one thing wrong. This is originally my stuff. The Luther family bank in Smallville Town has long been regarded as his own. The money in it certainly belongs to him." Old Hori was stunned when he heard Peter say that this was his stuff. Is there such a shameless guy in the world? After trying to calm down, he said to Peter, "I can do a lot of things with this money. We can change this despicable world. The law is regarded as a tool for those powerful people to enslave us, and bankers use these tools to exploit our hard-earned money, just like Leno Luthor and his group. They destroyed our homes and took away our savings. Since we have the ability to change this rule, why don't we do it together?" Old Hori excitedly expressed his views. After decades of imprisonment, he was reborn and wanted to do something. But Peter was not interested in his ambitions. He shook his head and said, "You sound like you think of yourself as the savior of the world, Mr. Hori." Old Hori replied, "Yes, I want to be the savior, but I am also a devil. Mr. Patrick, you are also a devil. We are the same people. Why can't we work together?" Peter looked at Old Hori in surprise. He didn't expect this old guy to talk about big principles. One said after another, "A villain like you should be famous in Gotham. Why do you stay in a small town and be content to be a security guard?" Peter coughed and threw all the messy thoughts out of his mind. He said to Old Hori, "You are right, Mr. Hori, you are a demon, I am a demon too, and we both don't mind being demons. Of course, I don't mind it more than you," he continued in a calm tone, "but I have passed that stage." Old Hori asked in confusion, "What stage?" "Pretend to be treated unfairly and abused, regard yourself as a victim, like a young lady who makes a fuss, as if everyone in the world is against you." After expressing his contempt for the other party, Peter took a step forward. He suddenly grabbed Old Hori's throat, who had no time to react, and lifted him up into the air. Hey, Old Hori, who was caught on the air, had a red face and struggled with his legs. "What a pity. You almost convinced me just now. Do you know why you failed?" "Why?" Old Hori, with bloodshot eyes, squeezed out this word with all his strength. "Because you are black." With a click, Peter broke the other party's neck. Plop! Old Hori, who died with his eyes wide open, took his lunchbox directly with resentment towards the racist. After killing the other party, Peter exhaled and looked at the night sky outside the window. The rain that had been falling all night seemed to have become lighter. In the abandoned factory, Jonathan and Martha, who were tied up, were anxiously thinking of a solution. "Sorry, Martha, it's all my fault. I should have been stubborn at the beginning." Jonathan regretted it at this time. He should have agreed to go to Peter's house at the beginning, otherwise he would not have been kidnapped by this monster. Now not only did he fail to protect Clark, but even his wife was involved. Just as Martha was about to comfort her husband, she suddenly heard footsteps outside. Jonathan and Martha thought it was Holly's footsteps, and they held their breath nervously. Squeak! The iron door was pushed open, and a figure slowly walked in. "Found you," Peter's familiar voice stunned the couple. "Peter." Martha looked at Peter in surprise as he appeared in front of her and was about to untie the rope for her. "What? Are you surprised to see me, Martha?" "No, I just didn't expect you to be here." "Peter, why?" Peter helped Martha untie the ropes tied around her body, and then walked towards Jonathan, who was also in shock. "That's a long story, but I think we have to leave here first." In the sound of the pattering rain, Peter drove Jonathan and Martha to Padrick Farm. "Peter, Martha and I don't know how to thank you." After listening to Peter's brief account of how he received Holly's letter and came here alone, Jonathan thanked Peter with guilt and emotion. "Don't be so polite. I'm Clark's godfather. We have always been a family, haven't we?" Peter said to Martha, who was beside him, with her eyes slightly red with emotion. "Yes, we are a family," Martha replied softly. She thought of the scene 6 years ago when Peter and she were at Walmart supermarket. At that time, Peter saved herself and Clark without hesitation. When she was about to say something else, the car had already arrived at Padrick's farm. After opening the door and getting out of the car, Martha was stunned to see the farm in front of her, which seemed to have been bombed by artillery shells. Peter, who was standing next to her, looked at the farm with shocked eyes. The first thought in his mind was that the U.S. government had bombed his farm with missiles. The ground was in a mess, with potholes and bumps. The soil that was turned up was wet by the rain and gave off a strong earthy smell. The fence outside the farm fell to the ground in pieces. The wall of the barn not far away seemed to have a big hole in it, and the broken wood materials were scattered around. The living room door was only half left after being knocked out, standing alone in the night. Through the half door, you can vaguely see the mess in the living room. The sofa, dining table, and stairs seemed to have all been damaged, and the damaged appearance showed what kind of damage they had suffered. Oh my God, Martha covered her mouth with her hands in disbelief. No. Clark. She quickly remembered that Clark was still on the farm, and immediately ran to the living room. Peter also followed with a sullen face. Martha ran into the living room like crazy, and what she heard was Clark's words that almost made her trip. No. Martha is my mother, and the Godfather is my biological father. I have always known that. John, you have laser eyes, you are not like the Godfather at all. Clark fell to the ground and couldn't stand up because of the kryptonite radiation. But he was still panting and saying words that broke Azu's defense. Azu, who was furious, was about to go up and cover his mouth, when he suddenly heard a voice behind him that made him feel cold all over. Azu, Peter's voice seemed to come from hell, causing Azu to press the pause button and stop where he was, not daring to move. Thank you for the reward from, thank you all for voting, bow. Continue to ask for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets, and make a fuss. Chapter 43. Azu's dream. Zu puffed up his cheeks nervously, and then slowly exhaled the gas from his mouth like a big mushroom. Dad, turning around and seeing Peter's livid face, Zu immediately realized that he had caused a big disaster. John Patrick, what did you do? Peter looked at the messy farm, and the veins on his forehead were throbbing. He never thought that when he went out to deal with the enemy, the two naughty kids who were guarding the house would actually fight each other. And looking at the traces of destruction at the scene, the two naughty kids were not joking. Dad, Zu originally wanted to defend himself, but looking at Peter's face, which was more serious than ever, he couldn't say anything. What did I say to you when I left, John? I'm sorry, Dad. I asked you to stay at home, and you tore down the house. You are brothers, but now you are fighting like enemies. Clark, who was standing next to him, saw the Godfather getting angry at Zu, and he felt a little nervous and scared. When he saw Zu facing the Godfather's anger alone, he felt sorry for him again. After hesitating for a while, Clark looked up and said to Peter, Godfather, it's my fault. I shouldn't have fought with John. Yes, Clark, you are the elder brother, you should be more rational. We will talk about your problem later. Peter also pulled Clark into the scope of the reprimand. Although he was angry about the brats fighting and destroying the house, he was not incomprehensible. What made him angry was that Zu, the brat, actually used kryptonite to deal with Clark. This kid was smart when dealing with his own people. John, do you remember what you promised me before? Protect Clark from being hurt by this meteorite. Look at what you are doing now. You actually use it to deal with Clark. Peter's tone became colder and colder. Clark is your brother. You use it to hurt your family? You are really amazing. John, you know how to use tricks at the age of 6. I am 7 years old. Dad. Zu's weak interruption made Peter even more irritable. No. Shut your mouth tightly, okay? Don't interrupt when adults are talking. Zu swallowed his saliva and was shocked by Peter's angry words and took a step back. What if something happens to one of you and Clark? I'm sorry, Dad. I just want to help you. I don't need your help now. John, Peter suppressed his anger. Even if I need help, this is not the way to do it. Fighting with Clark in a fit of anger, is this your way of helping? Zu lowered his head and said with some grievance and discomfort, I just want to be like you, Dad, but I hope you are better than me. After saying this, Peter glanced at him, resisted the urge to deal with the two naughty kids, and turned to walk upstairs. He didn't want anything now, just wanted to be quiet. Seeing Peter leave, Martha and Jonathan looked at each other. Martha, who was hugging Clark, walked towards Zu, who was lowering his head, squatted down and stroked his face. Don't worry, John, Dad is just a little angry, and he will be fine soon. Zu raised his red eyes. Sorry, Auntie, I shouldn't have fought with Clark. It's not your fault. Clark is also wrong. Jonathan asked Clark to come over and apologize to Zu. Looking at Zu's current appearance, Clark also felt a little regretful. He took the initiative to apologize to Zu. I'm sorry, John, I shouldn't have said those excessive words. Although Zu still cared about Clark's words, he had begun to reflect on himself. Feeling regretful and guilty, He shook his head and said to Clark, "I was wrong too. I promised to protect you from the meteorite, Clark. I didn't keep my promise." It was 12 o'clock in the morning. The patter of raindrops continued, and the whole farm exuded a rare quietness after the war. Zoo sat alone on the roof of the barn, while being drenched in the rain, looking at the cornfield in the distance with a depressed mood. What Peter said to him before kept echoing in his mind. Because he made Peter angry, he was always afraid that his father would never pay attention to him. The more he thought about it, the more scared he became, and the more wronged he thought about it. Zoo, who was about to cry, suddenly heard a familiar voice from behind. When Zoo heard Peter's voice, he quickly swallowed his saliva and held back the tears that were about to fall. Dad, Zoo, who was holding back, turned around and squeezed a smile to Peter standing behind him. Looking at Zoo, who looked aggrieved, Peter coughed and took out a piece of cinnamon bread and handed it to him. "Are you hungry?" "Yeah." Zoo took the bread and gobbled it up. In the previous battle with Clark, he consumed a lot of energy, and his stomach was making a gurgling sound because of hunger. "Dad, you are not angry with me anymore?" Zoo, who had eaten a few bites, put down the bread and asked nervously. "Do you know your mistake?" "I know, Dad. I should protect Clark and should not hurt him. I did not keep the promise I made to Dad before." Zoo sat on the roof of the barn, reflecting for a long time, and knew why his father was angry with him. "Well, promises are important, especially between family members. Since you promised to protect Clark from kryptonite, you should do what you say." Peter sat down and patted Zoo on the shoulder. "This is a promise between men." "I know." "Then, Dad, can I ask you a question?" "What?" Zoo hesitated. "Is Clark really Dad's biological son?" Looking at the other party's tangled expression and wanting to know the answer, Peter fell silent. Are today's naughty kids so precocious? They have already begun to know the difference between biological and non-biological children. And it seems that Azu cares a lot about his bloodline. In the future, we must gradually correct his bloodline concept. Otherwise, when he knows that he was sent here by an alien spaceship, won't he have a mental breakdown? Turning his thoughts to the present, he said to Azu, "No, Clark's biological father is Kenneth, but why does Clark have the same abilities as his father? You have the same abilities as your father, and you also have laser eyes. You are more powerful than your father. These are your talents." Azu nodded, showing a thoughtful expression. "I knew Clark was lying, Peter." He regretted a little that he didn't hit the kids but a few times downstairs before. Azu, feeling much better, said to Peter, "Dad, I had a dream." "What dream?" "I was in a house I had never seen before. It was full of photos I had never seen before, toys I had never played with, books I had never read, and many people there." "Do you like it there?" Azu held his chin with both hands. "No, I don't like it at all. I hate the loneliness there. There is no Dad there." Thanks to book friend last number 6959 and book friend last number 7715 for their rewards. I bow to thank everyone for their monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. I have never received so many gifts. I bow at a 90-degree angle. I hope all readers will be happy every day. Chapter 44, Single-handedly suppressing the god of death and the god of destruction. "Dad, I'm scared." "What are you afraid of, John?" "I'm afraid of going back to that room I've never seen before. I hate it." Azu took a deep breath. "Everything is white, as if I'm trapped there. I can't make a sound even if I want to shout." "Dad, is that the hell of Catholics you mentioned?" Peter was silent for a moment, shook his head and said, "That's not hell. Hell is too far away." Stroking Azu's hair, a thoughtful look appeared on his face. Although Azu was sent here by a spaceship since he was a child, he seemed to vaguely remember some memories before he came. In the Black Robe universe, Azu was born in a laboratory and began to undergo various experimental tests since he was a child, and was constantly brainwashed and controlled. Now that he has been sent to him by a meteor shower, he has avoided the tragic childhood of his previous life and his fate has changed. Since Azu has been sent to this universe, is there another Azu in the Black Robe universe? If so, is this phenomenon telepathy between two cosmic isotopes? If not, is it just a memory of birth that remains in Azu's mind? Crack! Just as Peter was lost in thought, a thunder sounded in the sky. Looking up at the rain that was getting stronger, Peter stood up and said to Azu, "It's late, John, go back to bed." "Yeah," Azu replied obediently, stood up and followed Peter off the roof of the barn. No words were spoken all night. In the morning, Peter contacted a construction team and started to repair the house with the help of Martha and Jonathan. The two naughty children who had caused trouble were helping him. Because of the heavy rain last night, Peter was able to use the excuse of heavy rain to explain the damage to the farm. At the fence, Clark secretly looked around, and after confirming that no one was paying attention to him, he stretched out his finger to press the nail and directly pressed the nail into the wooden stake. "You can't expose your ability, Clark," Azu didn't know when he stood behind Clark and said faintly. Touching his nose, Clark said a little embarrassedly, "Sorry, I forgot." After experiencing a fight last night, the two quickly reconciled. Although Clark still felt a little embarrassed when he saw Azu again. "I'm sorry about what happened yesterday, John. I shouldn't have said that," Clark apologized to Azu after he put up the stake. His statement that Martha is the mother and Peter is the father was severely suppressed last night. Martha, who felt that Clark had damaged her innocence, couldn't help but give him a few spanks on the butt. After being taught a lesson, Clark knew that words can't be said carelessly, so he apologized to Azu obediently. "It's okay," Azu generously expressed forgiveness. "Anyway, what you said was all false." He couldn't help but mutter in his heart. "I shouldn't have beaten you so hard last night." Azu took a breath and apologized to Clark. But these words sounded a little unpleasant in Clark's ears. He replied to Azu, "I shouldn't have thrown you on the stairs, John. I shouldn't have hit you with my head, Clark. I shouldn't have thrown you on the second floor and knocked you down, John. Then I shouldn't have thrown you into the barn, Clark, and punched through the wall." The two became more and more excited as they talked. Azu blushed and said, "I am stronger. I am the god of death. I am the lord of hell, the king of the abyss." Clark was not to be outdone and said, "I am Shiva. I am the destroyer of worlds. I am the scissors of the goddess of fate Atropos, John." Clark, hearing that the two seemed to be arguing again, Peter shouted at them and cast a warning look. Azu, the god of death, the lord of hell and the king of the abyss, and Clark, the Shiva and the destroyer of the world, were immediately suppressed by Peter's eyes and worked honestly. At the same time, Leno Luthor followed Officer Ryan into the old Hori's house. By investigating several recent murders in the town, the police soon found out that the deceased was related to a robbery case 40 years ago. 3 suspects involved in the case have been killed, and the only one alive, Old Hori, has become the biggest suspect. After some investigation, Ryan finally found out the true identity of Old Hori. Leno Luthor, the victim of the robbery, got the news from somewhere and rushed to the scene. After a search, the police found the demon mask as evidence of the crime in Old Hori's house. A young man? This doesn't quite fit your definition of a suspect. Leno looked around and said to Ryan. We all know that he was extremely strong during the robbery. He is not a normal person. Ryan did not have a good impression of this entrepreneur from Metropolis. His body has obviously undergone some kind of mutation. Mr. Luthor, your chemical plant has been discharging something into the Smalwell River. Maybe this has something to do with a chemical plant. A trace of displeasure flashed in Leno's eyes, and he said, the chemical plant has been closed by me, and we have never discharged anything into the river. It's just a guess, but since you have shut it down, it doesn't matter whether it is really discharged. Officer Ryan said to him, sorry, I have to leave for a while. The suspect has disappeared now. It is estimated that he has escaped. We have to arrange for his arrest. At this time, Ryan did not know that Old Hori had been destroyed by Peter and could not die anymore. Seeing that the other party did not like him, Leno Luthor did not want to be bored, so he left Old Hori's house directly and prepared to return to Metropolis. Just after walking a few steps, his men came to report to him that Peter's farm had been destroyed. After hesitating for a while, he cancelled his trip back to Metropolis and drove to Patrick's farm. 10 minutes later, at Patrick's farm, Peter was packing up the damaged things in the living room when the sound of a car engine came from outside the door. Leno Luthor walked to the farm and looked at the damaged buildings around him. The shocking traces of destruction looked like they had been ravaged by a typhoon, and it was a mess. Although there was a heavy rain last night, it only lasted for a short time and no typhoon hit. He frowned and wondered what happened here last night. Peter Patrick, who is this mysterious person? Mr. Luthor. Just as he was lost in thought, a voice came to him. Hearing Peter's voice, Leno immediately relaxed his brows and greeted Peter as if nothing had happened. I hope you don't feel presumptuous, Patrick. Leno took the initiative to shake hands with Peter. I heard that your farm was damaged in the heavy rain, so I came to see if I could help. You know, I set up an agricultural fund before to help support agriculture in Smallville town. Although Peter didn't know that the fund was set up specifically for him, he knew that the old guy must have bad intentions. No, thank you, Mr. Luther. I don't think I need help for the time being. Thank you all for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Bow. I have never received so many gifts in my life. Thank every reader. Chapter 45 First Flight Experience. Anyway, thank you for your generous help, Mr. Luther. Leno shook his head helplessly when he heard it. It seems that you still have some opinions about me, Patrick. No, I just think, Mr. Luther, that your agricultural fund should help farmers who need help more than me. Peter looked at Jonathan, who is repairing the roof in the distance. For example, Jonathan, he is planning to borrow money from the bank recently. I think your agricultural fund should be able to solve his difficulties. Leno glanced at Jonathan and said, of course, I also hope to help Mr. Kent. Then he took out a business card and handed it to Peter. This is my personal business card. If you have any questions, you can call this number. Peter took the business card and nodded. Thank you, I will. Maybe there are some misunderstandings between us, Patrick. After handing out the business card, Leno coughed and said, my company's employees may have had some minor frictions with you because of the farm acquisition. I apologize to you. I have dealt with the employee who acted on his own. He talked about the last time the Luther group wanted to forcibly buy the farm. It doesn't matter. Peter certainly didn't believe that this was his subordinate's own decision. According to the old fox's previous behavior, I'm afraid this subordinate was doing things according to his instructions. Now looking at the other party's performance, is this old fox plotting against him? Or is he simply coveting the swamp he purchased? He knew that the other party had sent people to the mayor's office to buy swamps, but he got there first. Putting away the business card, Peter suppressed the thoughts in his mind and said to Leno with a serious expression, people in the town may misunderstand you, Mr. Leno, and think that you have bad behavior, but I think bad behavior and doing evil should be two different things, don't you think? Leno, are you praising me or insulting me? Leno, who realized Peter's insidiousness, smiled awkwardly. As a businessman, you sometimes unconsciously become enemies with most people, even though sometimes this is not your intention. While the two were talking, they saw Martha coming over here. After a few more words, Leno said goodbye to Peter and left. Looking at Leno's leaving back, Martha asked Peter in surprise, he is, Leno Luther, well, this banker from Metropolis wants to fund me to rebuild the farm, but I don't need it, he said to Martha. Compared to you, you need help more. Martha was a little moved when she heard Peter's words. Thank you, Peter. I don't know how to thank you enough. It's okay, Martha. We are a family. However, there is one troublesome matter. You need to convince Jonathan. Peter sighed and said, he is not willing to accept the help of the Luther family. Yes, I don't need his help. On the way back, Jonathan shook his head and said, we can survive it. Martha sighed helplessly. You are still so stubborn, Jonathan. In fact, through what happened to Hori last night, I have realized many of my problems. Jonathan drove the car forward. I will try my best to correct it, but this matter is not a matter of stubbornness. The Luther family has always been cunning. If we accept his help, we may lose something more important in the future. Martha nodded when she heard it. She felt that what her husband said made sense. When the car drove to a remote road near Kent Farm, Martha suddenly noticed something. Jonathan, stop the car. What? Jonathan stopped the car and looked at his wife in confusion. Martha didn't say anything, but pushed open the car door and walked down to the place covered by weeds. Jonathan followed his wife and looked at the skeleton of an animal lying on the ground, and was stunned. The animal seemed to have been dead for a long time, and it was already in the form of white bones. The surrounding weeds were withered and yellow. Everything inside was a scene of desolation and decay. Is this a coyote? Jonathan squatted down and briefly examined the skeleton of the animal, and said uncertainly. But why did it rot so quickly? Shaking his head, Jonathan said puzzledly, we didn't smell the rotten smell when we passed here. Martha was also confused. After a while, she stood up and looked up at the sunset in the sky. The afterglow of the sunset faded, and the dim light sprinkled down, giving her a slightly cold feeling. The next day, Smallville Elementary School. Clark was about to put his school bag into the locker when he heard a familiar voice behind him. Hi, Clark. Hearing Lana's voice, Clark was so excited that he directly twisted the lock of the locker. Holding the lock he broke off, he quickly hid it behind his back and used his body to block the lock in the cabinet to prevent Lana from seeing anything unusual. Hey, Lana, Clark greeted Lana guiltily. Are you okay, Clark? Seeing that Clark's face looked a little strange, Lana asked with concern. I'm fine, just a little hot. Lana nodded and continued to ask without any doubt. I heard that Uncle Peter's farm was damaged yesterday? Is Uncle Peter okay? Clark didn't dare to say that the farm was destroyed by himself and Azu, so he could only deal with it vaguely. Yes, the Godfather is fine. That's good. Hearing Clark say that he was fine, Lana breathed a sigh of relief. Clark mustered up his courage and was about to say a few more words to the other party when Lana's friend came over. See you later, Clark. Lana took her friend's hand and waved to Clark and left. See you later. Looking at Lana's back, Clark muttered softly. Because he failed to strike up a conversation, Clark was still in a low mood when school was over in the afternoon. Azu didn't notice Clark's low mood. He was in a good mood. Clark, let's compete to see who can run to the farm first. Next time, Clark was in no mood. Are you scared? What are you afraid of? Azu said provocatively. I'm afraid that you can't run as fast as me. I run much faster than you. Clark's competitive spirit immediately rose when he heard Azu say that he ran slowly. I run faster than lightning. Well, let's try it. Clark, who was defeated by Azu's clumsy provocation, immediately stood at the same starting line as Azu. Ready, run. As Azu shouted the command run, the two immediately rushed forward like an arrow from a bow. Clark, who turned his grief and anger into strength, took the lead right away. The two naughty kids rushed forward on the road at a speed far beyond the human limit, forming two lightning bolts. Seeing that he was falling behind, Azu immediately gritted his teeth and tried his best to catch up. I will always run faster than you, Azu roared and ran forward with all his strength. Whoosh, a shadow flashed in front of Clark, and then in Clark's shocked eyes, Azu left the ground with both feet and rushed directly into the sky. Looking at Azu flying forward in the sky, Clark stopped, his face full of disbelief. The next second, with a scream, Azu fell directly from the sky and hit the windmill on the farm. The windmill collapsed, smoke, dust and rocks rose up, making a deafening sound. Chapter 46. You'll catch me, right? The collapsed rubble was scattered around, and the dust raised by the collapsed windmill spread outward. Seeing Azu buried by the collapsed windmill, Clark, who was in a daze for 2 seconds, finally reacted. He immediately threw away his school bag, ran to the collapsed windmill as fast as he could, waved his hand to disperse the dust, and began to dig stones with his hands. Hold on. Azu, I'll dig you out right away. While digging the stones with his hands, he nervously shouted to Azu who was buried underneath. Huff. Huff. Clark dug and finally dug Azu out. Azu, whose face was covered with dust and whose clothes became tattered, opened his mouth slightly, and his expression seemed to be frozen and motionless. Clark asked in a worried tone, Azu, are you okay? Azu wiped the dust off his face and asked Clark in confusion. I seemed to fly just now. He was still a little confused now. It seems so. Clark was relieved to see that Azu could still talk. If he could still talk, his head should not be broken. I seemed to be running faster and faster just now, and I flew up in a daze. Then I looked down, and I fell down out of fear, Azu said, patting his chest in fear. He was a little afraid of heights, and now he was afraid of it. Clark envied his ability, flying like a bird. I also want to have such an ability, but I broke the windmill again. Azu didn't want to discuss the novel experience of flying with Clark now. Looking at the windmill destroyed by him, his little face wrinkled. He just demolished the house the day before yesterday, and now he'd demolished the only windmill on the farm. If his father knew, he would be angry. Azu looked at Clark for help. Clark, you will keep it a secret from me, right? Of course. Clark nodded heavily and said in a serious tone, I won't tell anyone. Night. Padwick Farm. Thanks to Clark's betrayal, Peter soon learned that Azu had crashed the windmill. Dad, I'm sorry. Azu raised his head nervously while criticizing Clark, the traitor. In his heart, I didn't mean it, Dad. Of course I know you didn't mean it. Contrary to Azu's expectations, Peter did not get angry. Dad can't punish you for your unintentional mistake. Peter said that he was a reasonable and good father. John, can you still fly now? He is now very interested in Azu's flying ability. The watch has given him superhuman physical fitness. His current strength, speed, endurance, defense and other abilities are far beyond ordinary humans. He even suspects that these few abilities alone are not much different from Azu in his previous life. But now he can't fly and use laser eyes. Now that Zoo has awakened his flying ability, he can let this kid be his free flying tool in the future, and fly around in space to take a look at the scenery of the Earth. No, Zoo shook his head in frustration. I tried to recall the feeling of flying, but it didn't work at all, really. Peter put down the knife and fork in his hand and said to Zoo, maybe we can start special training. What special training? Dad, Eaglet flight special training. Zoo stood on the edge of the newly repaired barn roof and shouted to Peter standing below nervously, Dad, do I really have to jump down? Yes, don't hesitate, you will catch me. Right, of course, I will catch you every time. Half an hour has passed since the Eaglet flight special training. Zoo jumped from the roof more than 20 times. And each time he fell straight down without any sign of taking off. This kid has been enjoying it so much that Peter suspected that the two of them had colluded to trick him into playing the catching sun game with Zoo. He has caught this kid with his bare hands more than 20 times. Even a superhuman body can't stand this. Wait, seeing Zoo preparing to jump down again, Peter stopped him. John, when you jump down, you will feel scared, right? Yes, Dad, I am a little scared. I see. John, when you jump down, you should not think of fear, but anticipation, the yearning for flying. I can't do it, Dad. No, of course you can do it, Peter said to him. Remember your favorite game show Family Feud? The host is Richard Dawson, and you can guess the most popular answer almost every time. There is no correct answer in Family Feud, only the most popular answer. Once you asked me, Dad, why the questions are obviously very simple, but the participating families can't answer them? Do you remember how I answered you? Zoo on the roof thought for a while. Dad, you said at the time, wait until you stand under the light. The questions may become difficult. Peter snapped his fingers. That's it, John, you are standing under the light now, so you will forget the feeling of flying, and only the tension is left in your heart. In fact, it is not difficult to recall that feeling, right? Zoo nodded as if he understood. I think I understand, Dad. Very good. Come on. Bang. At Kent Farm, the informer Clark sneezed accidentally. The plate on the dining table fell to the ground with a dull sound. Clark saw his mother busy in the kitchen and quickly picked up the plate. Jonathan went out for something, so now only Clark and Martha were on the farm. Martha walked out of the kitchen, put the baked cookies on the table, and said to Clark, go wash your hands and get ready to eat. After washing his hands, Clark sat at the dining table, picked up a few cookies and stuffed them into his pocket. I have to leave a few for my godfather and Zoo. Martha was relieved to see her son so sensible. While eating cookies, Clark said to Martha, Mom, when we were at school, they said they saw an alien spaceship landing in the town. Hearing about the alien spaceship, Martha was startled and almost dropped the cookies in her hand. She coughed to cover up her gaffe. Alien spaceship? Did your classmates say when it happened? No, they just said that someone saw a blurry shadow flying across the sky. Some thought it was an alien spaceship, while others thought it was a chupacabra, a monster, or an alien. Chupacabra, a blood-sucking creature that appears in the legends of North America and Mexico. After listening to Clark's story, Martha breathed a sigh of relief. She thought there really was an alien spaceship coming. Since Clark was sent by a spaceship, Martha had an allergic reaction to the word spaceship and was afraid that the spaceship would take her son away. Maybe it was just a meteor, Martha said to Clark. Clark, chupacabra and aliens don't exist. Clark nodded and muttered, well, if I could fly like Zoo, maybe I could catch the spaceship. Martha didn't hear Clark's muttering clearly. What are you talking about, Clark? Nothing. Clark immediately shut up. He promised to keep Zoo a secret. Thanks to Emperor Xiandi, Lonely Dream Cloud 2, and Wen Yao Chang for their rewards. I bow 90 degrees. Thank you readers for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Thank you. Chapter 47, The Unyielding Clark. The next day, early in the morning, Peter received a call from the school at the farm. Dad, what's wrong? After Peter hung up the phone, Zoo rubbed his eyes and asked curiously. Last night's special flight training made him a little depressed. The school bus had a car accident and the car color fell off, so you can't take the bus to school in the next few days. Zoo nodded. Well, actually I don't have to take the school bus. I can run faster than the school bus. Running to school is a good way to exercise, but next time, Peter put the toast on the plate in front of Zoo and moved his eyebrows. You can't fly while running, John. I know, Dad. Zoo picked up the toast with a bitter face. Last night's special training ended in failure. He never found the feeling of flying. This made him begin to doubt whether he would never be able to fly in the future. "Dad, the school bus had a car accident. Is anyone injured?" Zhu suppressed his worries in his heart and asked about the school bus accident. "Probably not, that's a pity, Peter." He wondered if this kid was just being naughty. How could he say such an incorrect thing? Seeing Peter's unfriendly look, Zhu's heart skipped a beat and he quickly explained, "I mean, Dad, Ms. Rachel must feel pity. She has always longed for normal patients." "Who is Rachel?" "Rachel is a doctor in the infirmary. She said there are only 2 types of abnormal patients in the school infirmary." Zhu told Peter about Dr. Rachel's complaints that he overheard with his super hearing. Peter asked with interest, "Which 2? One is athletes who want to play with bruises, myocarditis, and other diseases. They just don't want to sit on the bench, even if it will bring great danger to their careers in the future." Zhu took a bite of bread and continued, "The other is girls with various intractable diseases. Before various exams, they will come very frequently. Before the end of the semester, they will say that they have monotonic or pneumonia. Bronchitis is the last resort. The teachers who take exams are all cunning. After getting sick, they can take easier make-up exams. If students know that the exams are objective questions instead of writing essays, their illnesses will usually be more serious." Zhu has never been sick, so he doesn't understand the relationship between illness and exams. He asked Peter curiously, "Dad, can you really avoid exams if you are sick?" Peter fell silent after hearing this. Is this trick so popular in the United States? Shaking his head, he decided to nip Zhu's dangerous idea in the bud. "No, it's shameful to use such unfair means, John." Zhu nodded to show that he understood. He said in a serious tone, "If I encounter an exam that I don't know, Dad, my eyes can see other people's answers, so I won't pretend to be sick." Peter, he looked at Zhu's butt that deserved to be spanked. It seems that he has done this kind of thing many times. Your cheating behavior is even more shameful than those who pretend to be sick. Zhu, who was spanked by Peter a few times, made a bitter face and prepared to drive the cows to the fence. "Come on, cows, let's go." He drove the cow in the front, but he didn't expect the cow to ignore him at all. "Go to the fence, cows, hurry up, it's time to go." He patted the cow's butt, but it still didn't move. Helpless Zhu pinched his waist, not knowing what to do. Maybe a little superpower might help. Zhu suddenly came up with an idea. He walked to the cow and reached out to hug it. Moo! The cow, who was eating grass, suddenly lost its balance and was lifted into the air. Zhu held the cow and walked out of the barn. Bang! Bang! Heavy footsteps stepped on the ground. Just when Zhu was proud of his wit, he didn't expect that the cow's milk would shoot directly into his face. Sudden attack, Zhu was stunned. Subconsciously, he stretched out his tongue to lick the milk on his face. Surprise, disbelief and a little excitement appeared on his face. John, hearing Peter's voice, Zhu immediately recovered from his daze, quickly put the cow on the ground, pretending nothing had happened. After Peter came out, he looked at the milk on Zhu's face, and then looked at the cow on the ground. Suspiciously looking at the other's face, Peter asked him, "Are you okay, John? Did this naughty kid do something perverted? Why does the scene in front of him feel inexplicably familiar?" "I'm fine, Dad." Zhu looked at Peter nervously. "Well, you should go to school, okay, Dad?" Zhu felt as if he had been pardoned and immediately fled the farm as fast as he could. Peter watched Zhu's back as he left and fell into deep thought. It seems that this kid can no longer be entrusted with the work related to cows. Smallville Elementary School. Zhu and Clark put their school bags in the lockers. "Zhu, have you heard about alien spaceships?" "No, I'm not interested." Zhu shook his head. He was more concerned about how to fly. "They say the blurry shadows falling from the sky are extraterrestrial creatures." Clark was obviously interested in this kind of science fiction story. Someone in the class is planning to set up a science club to explore and investigate this kind of thing. Besides, recently someone in the town said that they lost their poultry and livestock. Clark turned around and said excitedly, "Maybe there are really aliens in this world, John." Did the science exploration program say that many cases of cattle slaughter were related to aliens? Zhu, who was a little annoyed by what he said, slammed the door of the cabinet and turned to Clark and said, "There are no aliens in this world. Compared with the existence of aliens, I would rather believe in the existence of vampires." Zhu sneered at Clark's alien theory. He loves watching horror movies and believes in vampires more than aliens. Clark looked at Zhu, who was leaving, and exhaled in frustration. It seems that he can't drag Azu to investigate aliens together. Afternoon. After school. Clark stayed in school for a while because he was curious about the science club. When he left school, Azu had already left. Well, if there's no school bus, I can run home with peace of mind, Clark muttered as he walked forward. After walking a few steps, he heard a commotion coming from a nearby parking lot. Curious, he walked forward 2 steps and found that it was a senior student who was bullying a classmate wearing a baseball cap. Clark remembered that his name seemed to be Adrian. The tall and strong senior student punched Adrian in the face. With a bang, Adrian hit the wall behind him. He wailed and covered his mouth with both hands, and blood flowed from his fingers. Another senior student kicked him in the abdomen with a shoe, kicking him back a step. Seeing this, Clark couldn't help but come out to stop a few people. Hey, stop it. The 3 senior students looked back at Clark, who suddenly appeared, and looked at each other. Who the hell are you? This accomplice of the dead glass. I'm his classmate. Clark walked over and bravely protected Adrian behind him, staring at the few people with angry eyes. I'm Clark Patrick Kent. I don't know you, little brat, but if you don't want to end up like him, get out of the way. The tall and strong student with 2 large rings in his hands threatened Clark. No, Clark said in a firm tone, you can't hurt him. Chapter 48, As Much Love as Hate. Then go to hell. The senior student wearing the ring stretched out his fist to hit Clark. Clark's dynamic vision, which was far superior to that of ordinary people, made it easy for him to grab the opponent's wrist. Although he wanted to punch this annoying guy in the face as his godfather said. But when he thought of his father's words to him, hide your ability, Clark, who was struggling violently in his heart, did not control the strength of the other party's hand, causing the other party to scream. Ah! Damn it! Let go! Let go! The student wearing the ring struggled to get his wrist out of Clark's hand. But no matter how he struggled, his wrist was like being cast in Clark's hand and could not be shaken at all. The scream woke Clark up from his dream, and he immediately let go of the other party's hand. The student wearing the ring looked at his right hand that was in pain, and he was both shocked and angry. He did not expect Clark to have such amazing strength. Bang! The accomplice next to him saw that the boss had suffered a loss, and stepped forward and pushed Clark viciously. Clark fell heavily to the ground and hit the metal wire mesh with a dull sound. Just as several people were about to beat up Clark, the student whose wrist was pinched stopped them. Forget it, let's go. But, Tang, your hand. Tang looked down at his swollen wrist, and looked at Clark with some fear. This kid is lucky. We still have work to do. Let's go. Although several people were unwilling, they could only leave indignantly. And Adrian, another classmate who was saved by him, was scared and ran away as soon as he saw Clark's amazing strength. Clark leaned against the wall with his back and took a deep breath to calm down. Are you okay? A somewhat unfamiliar figure suddenly stood in front of Clark and stretched out his hand to him. Clark looked up in surprise and saw that it was a fat boy with freckles on his face. Dal. The other party was Dal, who bullied him last time and was pushed down from the slide by Azu. Dal stretched out his hand with a complicated expression and pulled Clark up from the ground. That's Don Haggerty. He's in the 5th grade. Last time I saw them kick a student onto the road. After the two walked along the road for a few minutes, Dale lowered his head and said to Clark, I heard that he wears 2 big rings on his right hand. One is his brother's high school graduation ring, and the other is one he made himself when he was in the craft class. He often breaks people's lips with the rings. Dell, I don't understand. Clark wanted to ask why the other party pulled him up. Dale stopped, exhaled and looked at Clark. I saw you and John pushing the school bus to the shore. Hearing Dale's words, Clark was stunned. I didn't tell anyone, not even my mother. Dale looked at him with awe and gratitude. Claire's mother said you are a miracle from God, a manifestation of God. She was so enthusiastic when she said that, he stammered to Clark, that's not a miracle. You and John saved us. I don't think we should thank God, but you, don't worry, Clark, I will keep it a secret for you. I swear. As if seeing Clark's worry, Dale took the initiative to promise that he would keep the secret for the two of them forever. Clark was a little confused, but still thanked him. Thank you, Dale. At night, Don Haggerty rode his bicycle to his home. The night had not yet completely fallen, and the direction of the road could be vaguely identified. Riding a bicycle, Don Haggerty looked at the ring made in the handicraft class on his right hand. It was engraved with 2 intertwined English letters DP, which stood for Dead Bugs, a heavy metal band he admired very much. He looked away from the ring and looked at the red and swollen wrist on his right hand. His originally good mood suddenly became bad. He planned to investigate the details of this guy named Clark before dealing with him. The night wind blew on his back, and he suddenly felt uneasy. It seemed that something was following him in the increasingly dark back. His heart was beating hard, and the sound of his heart beating in his ears, wrists and chest always made him nervous. Sometimes he even felt that this was not a pump that was diastolic and systolic, but a large tachometer in his left chest, with a pointer approaching the red alert zone. Stopping his bike, Don Haggerty looked back nervously. Everything behind him was normal. He swallowed his saliva, turned around, and continued to pedal forward. In order to relieve the sudden uneasiness and fear in his heart, he took out his lighter and prepared to smoke a cigarette to relieve his emotions. Although he was a 5th grade student, he had already learned the skill of smoking without a teacher. Click, the sound of the lighter being turned on rang out, breaking the dark night. The next second, a black shadow suddenly pounced on him. Bang! Don Haggerty, who didn't have time to scream, was thrown to the ground with a dull sound. Soon, a strong smell of blood filled the air. You seem to be worried, Clark. Peter, who was having dinner at Patrick's farm, asked Clark, who seemed absent-minded. I almost got into a fight with someone, Godfather. Clark put down his knife, raised his head and said to him, I don't know why. I know I should restrain my thoughts of helping others, but I still can't ignore the difficulties others encounter. I always disappoint people, Godfather. Peter glanced at Azu, who was also confused, and made sure that the other party should not know what happened to Clark. Saving is not a wrong thing, Clark, but I don't understand why Dad keeps asking me to turn a blind eye. Clark fell into a dead end because of what happened during the day. On the one hand, he agreed with his father's hiding his ability, but because of Dale's words, he felt that he shouldn't think too much about helping others. Peter asked him, so you think there is something wrong with Jonathan's words, right, Clark? No, Clark didn't know how to describe it. Your father's most important identity is a father. He is also a human being and a devout believer. He has desires, is selfish, fearful, and conflicted. So am I, Clark. As a father, he understands your kindness, so he can accept your talent, but what will this ability mean to other people who have desires, fears, and selfishness? Although Peter was a little troubled by Jonathan's stubbornness, he also admitted that he was a responsible father. You and John, because of your power, people will believe in you as gods, admire you, and believe in you unconditionally, but at the same time, people will also regard you as a threat, fear you, and doubt you without reason because of your power, but most people will never understand you. You will gain as much love as you don't understand, and you will gain as much hate as you don't understand. After a pause, Peter looked into the eyes of the two and said slowly, sometimes in order not to cause greater chaos and sacrifice, you have to be forced to ignore the sacrifice in front of you. This is what Jonathan is trying to teach you, Clark. Just like if you didn't push the school bus at the beginning, there would not be a kidnapping incident later. The two boys heard Peter talk so much for the first time and fell into a little shock. After a while, Clark asked Peter, Godfather, do you think so too? Peter shook his head, not absolutely. He picked up the coffee and said to the two, I won't ask you to sacrifice, nor do I want you to be gods who are loved and hated by others. He didn't have the same awareness as Jonathan. Dad, Azu suddenly raised his head and said in a firm tone, if necessary, I can sacrifice for Dad, thanks to the lost little lamb, Zhou County Liuzun, and Suxi Town for their rewards. Thank you for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Thank you for your hard work. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49, Mysterious Death. The next day, near the Smalwool River, Officer Ryan stood beside the withered marigolds on the shore, smoking one cigarette after another. It seemed that just one more cigarette could cure the depression in his chest and make him breathe a little easier. But even when he finished the last cigarette, the depression did not reduce at all. Shaking his head, he threw away the cigarette butt and walked to the coroner who was examining the body. There was a body lying in the grass, with a strange distortion on the face. The skin was cracked and aged, and it looked like a mummy with the bandages removed. Have you found out the identity of the deceased? Ryan asked his assistant. Preliminary confirmation is that the deceased is Don Haggerty, 12 years old. 12 years old. Ryan looked at the dry body in disbelief. How is it possible? The assistant handed him the evidence bag. This is the ring on the deceased's hand. We asked someone familiar with the deceased to identify it and prove that this is the ring that Don Haggerty always wore. Ryan stared at the two eye-catching letters DB on the ring and was in great shock. Impossible. He squatted down and stared at the strange corpse. It looks like he has been sucked dry. An idea suddenly flashed through his mind. Could it be that vampires really exist? No, impossible. Shaking his head, he threw this absurd idea out of his mind and asked his assistant, who is the last person the deceased contacted. According to several of his classmates, after they had a conflict with Clark Kent, the deceased rode home alone. Who? Hearing Clark's name, Ryan was stunned for a moment. You mean Clark Kent, Peter Patrick's godson? Yes, Peter Patrick again? After repeating Peter's name, his brows frowned. At this time, Clark didn't know that Don Haggerty, who had a conflict with him yesterday, had died. He was working on the Patrick farm to earn pocket money. Azu took a leaflet that he didn't know where he picked up from, angrily crumpled it into a ball and threw it on the ground. Clark put down the pitchfork in surprise and picked up the leaflet. This is a Christian leaflet disguised as a US dollar. Printed on it was a short story advising young people not to lose their ambitions due to playing with things. It said that playing online games like Dungeons and Dragons was like lying on the devil's breast and sucking the milk of hell. Clark threw the flyer away with an unnatural look on his face. He knew why Azu was angry. He probably thought it was a banknote and couldn't wait to pick it up, but he found out that he was fooled. You know, Azu is a little money grubber and will do anything to make pocket money. I don't believe this. Zu put the lawnmower aside and said a little depressed. Dad said he doesn't want us to become gods that are believed in and hated by others. I hate God. Clark's father Jonathan is a Christian, but he doesn't hate religion very much. God will bless every believer. Zu used Peter's words to suppress Clark. Dad said, Christians always say that there are 144,000 seats in heaven, but billions of people have died on God's green earth, but he only likes 144,000 of them. God may be a stupid guy. Clark was silent when he heard Zu's treasonous words. Although he wanted to refute the other party, he couldn't find a suitable argument. Well, the Godfather's words always make sense, he muttered, and when he was about to continue working, he noticed that a police car drove into the farm, and his parents also drove over. Stopping what he was doing, he scratched his hair in confusion, not knowing what happened. A few minutes later, Clark and Zu stood beside Peter nervously. Jonathan and Martha sat beside them with serious faces. The police only asked a few questions and left, but Jonathan and Martha were in shock. If the police hadn't come to their door, they wouldn't have known that Clark had a fight with someone yesterday. Martha asked Peter, Peter, you know about this, right? She was a little jealous. Not only did her son stay at Peter's house every day, but he would also hide things from her. Instead, she was more willing to confide in Peter. Yes, I know, but I don't think it's a big deal. Clark didn't fight back. Peter cast a comforting look at the uneasy Clark. But Don Haggerty is dead. It was just an accident, and it had nothing to do with Clark. Peter calmly added coffee to Martha's cup. We can't blame Clark for the accident, right? I didn't blame Clark for the mistake. I just thought. Martha looked at Clark and said helplessly, Clark, you should have told us about this. Sorry, Mom, Dad. Clark apologized to Martha and Kenneth. Jonathan was more understanding. He touched Clark's hair. Did they hurt you, Clark? No, Dad. Oh, you didn't fight back, did you? Yes, but I really wanted to beat those guys. Beat them hard. Hearing her son say this, Martha immediately stopped him. Hey, Clark, it's okay. Clark, I want to beat them too, and I want to encourage you to fight back. Will that make you feel better? Jonathan comforted Clark. But you won't do that, right? Yes, I know, Dad. I know you asked me to restrain myself. Clark repeated what his godfather said to him yesterday to Martha and Jonathan. After listening, the couple looked at each other. Jonathan looked at Peter with emotion. Although he had always disagreed with some of Peter's educational concepts, whom he regarded as a brother, he knew that the other party had always understood and helped him. This is also the reason why he trusted Peter and agreed to let Clark live here. After Jonathan and Martha left, Zu asked Peter in confusion, Dad, is Don Haggerty really dead? He wanted to beat this guy up, but he didn't expect that he would die. Peter had received a call from Chandler before and knew about Don Haggerty's death and the situation at the scene. Yes, Don Haggerty is dead, but why? Dad, what happened? Clark, with his ears erect, also came over. Although he wanted to beat Don Haggerty up yesterday, he was still quite upset about his death. I don't know, maybe it was just an accident. Although he said this, Peter's expression became solemn. What on earth can turn a living corpse into a mummy? In the new week, I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Thank you, readers. Chapter 50, Dad's Life Alarm Clock. Smallville Town, Luthor Manor. Lionel Luthor sat in his office, watching the internal video of the laboratory, frowning slightly. Although the Luthor chemical plant has been closed, the secret laboratory set up inside the chemical plant is still conducting research on kryptonite. This is the dead coyote body we found at the place where the meteorite, or spaceship, fell, Dr. David Harewood, who was in charge of the autopsy, said to the camera while examining the coyote's body. A few days ago, the residents of Smallville had observed that something like a UFO had landed in the sky. After receiving the news, Lionel Luthor immediately sent his men to search the scene. Although nothing valuable was found, the body of an animal that died strangely was finally found at the scene. In the video, David Harewood exclaimed, "This is impossible." He had an expression of disbelief on his face. The coyote still has body temperature. At first, the tissue was hardened, but now it has softened and the body temperature has returned to normal. Using a scalpel to cut open the coyote's body, David Harewood's expression was full of confusion. It looks like it has regained life. Putting down the scalpel, he prepared to record the experimental data. Unexpectedly, the part of the coyote's chest that was cut open suddenly stretched out black tentacles and wrapped around David's arm. The sticky black tentacles suddenly wrapped around his right arm and pulled towards the coyote's wound. Caught off guard, David's arm was pulled directly into the bloody wound. "Oh my God! Save me!" David cried out in pain and called for help from the assistant and guard beside him. The startled assistant immediately came to help, and the guard outside the laboratory rushed in immediately after hearing the cry for help. With the help of the assistant and guard, David's hand was finally pulled out. However, before the two could breathe a sigh of relief, something strange happened. David's right arm suddenly grabbed the guard's neck. The defenseless guard was caught in midair and thrown out. Bang! The guard's body slammed heavily on the test bench covered with instruments, and the experimental equipment was smashed to pieces, making a deafening sound. The frightened assistant looked at David Harewood in astonishment. He didn't expect that the doctor, who was originally gentle, would suddenly go crazy. He wanted to escape after reacting, but just turned around and saw David appear on the way to the laboratory exit without knowing when. Blinking again, a bloody hand had already grabbed his terrified face and lifted him up easily. The strength in the hand was increasing, and the assistant could even hear the sound of his skull bones colliding. At the same time, the appearance on his face was aging at a speed visible to the naked eye. As the expression on David's face became more and more hideous, the assistant's screams became weaker and weaker. Plop! After a moment, the assistant, who had lost his breath of life, fell heavily to the ground. David Harewood, who absorbed the assistant, suddenly looked at the camera with his dark eyes. Click! Lionel Luthor pressed the pause button. The other party's distorted face was frozen on the screen. Knock! 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 There was a knock on the door outside, and Lionel Luthor pressed the close button to turn off the video recorder. "Come in, sir. The police found a body near the Smallville River." His subordinates came in and handed Lionel Luthor a stack of information. Leno opened the information and what came into his sight was Don Haggerty's shrunken body. The other party's horrible shrunken face was very similar to that of the dead assistant. After flipping through a few pages of information, he asked his subordinates, "Is there any news about David Harewood?" David Harewood suddenly killed the guards and assistants and fled the laboratory. Although Leno sent almost all his men to look for him, there was still no news. "Not yet, sir." Then speed up. When he wanted to say something else, the phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone impatiently. "What's the problem?" "Anna," the secretary reported to him. "Sir, Lex has arrived at the manor." "What?" A few minutes later, Leno Luthor looked at the excited bald Lex in front of him speechlessly. "Lex, you should have called me in advance. Dad, I want to give you a surprise." "I miss you." Lex said that he missed his father, so he asked the driver to bring him from Metropolis. "You shouldn't have come." Leno was not as happy as Lex imagined. He picked up the phone. "Anna, arrange for the driver to take Lex back." Lex looked at him disappointedly. Dad, this was different from what he imagined. The joy and excitement of seeing his father were instantly diluted. Leno Luthor saw Lex's disappointed eyes and hesitated. But when he thought of the dangerous situation he was facing, he finally asked his men to take Lex out. In the evening, Padrick Farm. Peter was not at home. At this time, only Clark and Azu were on the farm. Clark was a little depressed because of Don Haggerty's death. "Clark, this has nothing to do with you," Azu said to him. "You can't be responsible for the death of everyone." He helped pile up the Korean logs in a corner of the farm. Clark let out a sigh of dejection. "I know, Godfather said that each of us, from birth to death, is interwoven by a series of events. Every time we spend, everything we do, a loving word or an angry gesture, is just a tiny vibration on the spring of life, after countless vibrations, until one day, something triggers the alarm clock of life, the bell rings, and our life comes to an end." Azu thought about it, although he didn't quite understand it, but he felt that it seemed to make sense. "Well, Dad is right. Maybe Don Haggerty's life alarm clock has been shaken. This is too sudden. Human life is really too fragile," Clark said with a frown. "What if the alarm clocks of Godfather and Mom and Dad are shaken?" Azu felt that Clark was too dark in his heart. "Clark, you are too dark. Dad will never die, but Socrates said that everyone will die. Dad is not an ordinary person. Socrates is a man, and the Godfather is also a man. Socrates will die, and the Godfather will die too. Dad is not a man." Azu was confused by Clark. "No, that's not right. I mean, Dad is not immortal." Just when Azu was angry and ready to roll up his sleeves to teach Clark a lesson, Clark suddenly made a gesture to silence him with a serious expression. "Hush! Be quiet, Azu." Azu stopped immediately, and his super hearing also heard the strange sound coming from the barn. The two looked at each other and nodded in tacit understanding. Swoosh! Azu activated his super speed and arrived in the barn in just a blink of an eye. The barn was quiet, and the red light of the setting sun shone in, spreading a quiet atmosphere. Azu looked around vigilantly, while slowly stepping on the repaired stairs and going up to the second floor. Suddenly, a black shadow stood behind Azu. Who, without hesitation, Azu turned around and punched subconsciously. Bang! Unexpectedly, the other party caught Azu's fist steadily. Azu looked at the black man in front of him in shock, and uttered the words that almost made the other party go berserk. "Nini." Although Azu closed his mouth in time, the black man knew what he wanted to say. "This brat of the night of this race. Thanks to the Lost Little Lamb, Battlefield Ghost, and Zhou County Liuzuan for their rewards. Bow. Thank you readers for your monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. I have read every name. I am really grateful." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.